The sky so far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Got a pride of a falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I will be conducting you Beyond the Veil this evening. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and your conductress, Mrs. Gio.
Good evening, everyone.
And we have an awesome show for you. Brooks Agnew will be joining us in the second and third hour of the broadcast. You know, I was listening to Brooks a couple of years ago. I think we had him on our show back then when I heard this, or I heard him talking about it on his show, X Squared Radio, that you can hear right here on Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com, on Sundays, 5 o'clock to 7? 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock,
5
yeah.
o'clock to 8 o'clock Pacific time at TFRlive.com. So as I was listening to him, he was talking about the 18th breath. And one of the things that Sheree and I have been talking about doing on the show lately is kind of bringing you some information that you can actually apply in your day-to-day life out there. And I think it's vital that we do that. I just put out a video, the Transcendental Object at the End of Time and the Future of Beyond the Veil. And, you know, I've been feeling over the last couple of months that I'm ready to hang it up. And not because I'm tired of doing what I'm doing, but rather because there's an underlying mission that needs to be focused on. And we've pretty much said everything that we can possibly say about the raw consciousness topic. There is the raw mission now. So now things have evolved into a whole nother playing field here and a whole nother level. But I do want to reel it back in the second and third hour just a little bit, and hopefully you'll be able to take something out of it. Brooks is very, very insightful, and we also want to talk about becoming the master architect of your reality, how energy works in this construct, and how you can apply that energy as above, so below to your particular journey as well. And Brooks also wants to get into some time travel stuff too, and theorize on the scientific applications of time travel. So this is going back to the, you know, a little bit older format of Beyond the Veil, but I'm really, really excited to do this. And I know we actually received an email. Who was it, from TW?
I think it was.
Yeah, a
yes.
longtime listener, has been listening to us since the very, very beginning. I mean, he's been on the entire journey with us, and he said, "Hey, I'm so glad that you're going to start bringing guests back on and interviewing people." And yeah, I think it's a great direction. Frank Castle will be joining us next Friday too. It's been a while since we've had Frank on, so I'm really looking forward to that show as well. And we will get some more badasses, some more magas on the broadcast. Maga is actually Greek for badass, and they have been using that hashtag MAGA and tying it into this recent school shooter. And I'm like thinking to myself, do they not realize that MAGA actually means badass in Greek? Because it stands for Make America Great Again. So they're trying to tie Trump into this recent school shooting, which I don't want to talk about because I want to take a couple steps back with Beyond the Veil, but I don't want to take it all the way back to politics.
No,
not at all. But I thought it was kind of funny and comical that they're doing hashtag MAGA, which is like hashtag badass. But Make America Great Again. I wonder if Trump knew that MAGA.
That's what it stands for.
So anyways, how's Mrs. Gio this evening?
You know, I've had strep throat all week, but I'm feeling much better now. And I think it's because of you guys' energy. But we have a really jam-packed show for you guys tonight. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I got lucky because I actually had a sinus infection a couple of weeks ago, and so I was already taking antibiotics when she got the strep.
Right.
So it didn't hit me at all. So anyways, we'll be right back. I do want to get into the raw consciousness topic in the first hour, though, the raw mission right here on Beyond the Veil. Many people ask, Chris, how can I support Beyond the Veil? Well, first and foremost, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The more engagements a video gets, the more likely it is for YouTube's AI to recommend it to others with similar interests. Same goes with Facebook too. You can also find us on iHeartRadio.com. Just search for Beyond the Veil. We have a dedicated streaming channel where we play the best of BTV 24 hours a day. You can also send us questions, comments, and guest suggestions to info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. Finally, the most support you can give is by sending positive and loving energy to all of us here at Beyond the Veil and all of the Beyond the Veil viewers. Together, we are building a field of energy to rival the artificial intelligence control of this matrix. Take a moment to meditate on yourself, others around you, and tap into this amazing energy field. Now, let's get back to the show.
My dear traveler, the purpose of raw consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together. And that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now rise. Follow your conductors. And fear no danger. As you step beyond the veil.
Lots of love coming from the chat room. Of course, Jexy, Mo, Kimberly, Tara, Nature's Way, Sunshine On, Joseph, Mosaic, Kavos. Kavos actually sent a badass comment earlier. I don't know if Sheree put it down to go over, but wow, dude, I totally resonate with what you said earlier, and I really appreciate it. And Lowland Prophets, Heart of the Rebel, of course, who is right there on the front line with us every single weekend. Yiggity Yamp and many, many, many more. Much love to everybody out there. So we put out a video, and a Gemini Moon too, who said badass video earlier, and I appreciate that, Gemini. Thank you. And it's really like coming from the heart. So for anybody that didn't catch it, we were talking about the transcendental object at the end of time, and how that's really been the mission, to pull this object out of hyperspace. And I've always talked about the reset button, but I've never really talked about what the reset button actually is. And the way I see it, Terrence and Dennis were kind of the markers. They identified the object, they found where it was located, they started leaving breadcrumbs that sent the second wave in, or maybe the third or fourth, I don't know how many waves there were before. But when they identified the object in the 70s, that's when we and several other souls, or I don't even want to use this word souls, let's use consciousness for lack of a better term. So we and several other consciousness decided to plug ourselves back into the matrix because we found the data stream, we found where this object was, and now it's time to bring it out. What is this object going to do when we bring it out? When we bring it out, we can only speculate. I think it's either an antivirus or, as some of you have mentioned, a control panel to be able to do some system restores and some much needed system updates on this out of control system that we're dealing with here. But it does take a level of discipline, a level of understanding, and a level of going deeper than I have ever gone personally before. And I would venture to say that it was deeper than a lot of people have gone in the past. John Lilly was one person that went really deep, and I would say, you know, with all due respect to Dennis and Terrence, I would say that John Lilly, from what I understand, went way deeper than Terrence and Dennis went, except for the incident at La Chorrera where they brought out the the transcendental object at the end of the time, which I think is very key and one of the deepest levels in the Matrix. And it's funny, they named it the transcendental object at the end of time, which to me resonates like that is the reset button. Like, there it is. It's the end of time because that's what resets the system back to the point of before infection. So there's a big journey and a Vision 2020 that we're working towards here in our personal journey. And I've got to get myself ready. I've got to get my body ready. I've got to get my mind ready. I've got to get my spirit ready. I've got to do all of that. And I think that the Kundalini meditation, as I said in that video, I put out a video a couple of weeks ago about psychedelics versus meditation. And that was really put out based on the frustration of people telling me the ayahuasca path is wrong. I think that there is some benefit to meditation, and I think that maybe implementing some Kundalini meditation perhaps in the ayahuasca experience will actually help to give it like a booster to it and really add strength to it. And I understand there's many, many, many different paths out there, and I'm not knocking any path out there, but it does piss me off when somebody comes in and tells me, no, your path is wrong, because I'm like, I don't sit here and tell people their path is wrong. I just get pissed off when people tell me that my path is wrong, because I'm walking my path and I know my path.
Right.
So, yeah, that's where I'm coming from as far as that goes. So I'm really looking forward to having Brooks in the second and third hour of the broadcast to talk about that and take us down those journeys. Mrs. Geo. I've
been reading and trying to figure out more about what other people have said about this transcendental object. And to be honest, the most helpful person so far has been Dennis McKenna. He has been the one person that seems to understand what it is that we were even asking for. Because I know a lot of people have asked, not just Dennis, but other people as well, and especially Terrence when he was still alive. A lot of people asked him about the transcendental object at the end of time. And most people see it as a singularity thing. Like, oh, when we reach the point of singularity, I guess singularity would be when all things become one.
Merge on top of one another.
Yeah.
And it feels like we are heading to that point of singularity right now, because the Mandela effect, everything that possibly can happen is happening simultaneously. I mean, things are just completely chaotic and so in order at the exact same time that we have to be going to that point of singularity.
Right. We have to be. And another thing that Terrence McKenna once said was that the time wave zero theory had everything to do with the transcendental object. The time wave zero was basically like a countdown clock to the singularity, and that the singularity would occur sometime after December 21st, 2012. The singularity would occur, and then at that point of singularity, that's when I think the transcendental object can be brought out. But we are headed towards that point, and it's really exciting to see.
Well, that's actually really interesting, because I feel like there was a major shift in 2012 and something happened. I thought, I speculated at first that was the point that we were transferred from a real environment into an artificial simulation. But the more that I meditate on that, the more I realize, no, that's not quite right. I think the 2012 marker was a data point in the matrix system itself, when perhaps the matrix itself was going to have to exert so many system resources, and it would become more and more apparent that we are living inside of a matrix because of the glitches and anomalies and things like that. So that could be why the I Ching and everything else was pointing to that 2012 date, and everybody misinterpreted it as an end date, as a catastrophic event, including us. I mean, we were also doing many shows about the possibility of a catastrophic event, but there definitely was an event, and there is still an event that's taking place now. And if you want to call it a consciousness shift, if you want to call it an ascension into fourth, fifth dimension, fourth, fifth density, whatever you want to call it, something has happened around the 2012 mark. So,
this is going to sound weird, but I just had an idea that maybe December 21st, 2012 was the date that the firewall fell down and the transcendental object became available to us. Before that point, the Matrix has complete control over this thing, and it's a self-regulating system. And then December 21st, 2012, it runs out of resources and the firewall falls down and we are able to get in.
That's an interesting theory, and we need to reach out to Dennis again and get him back on the show in the next couple of weeks.
That would be really
I
good.
hate to put you back to work, Mrs. Gio, but I think it's time that we start reaching out to the minds of everybody again and pulling our resources and really bringing everything together. Over the last few months, it's been just revelation after revelation after revelation, and it's been so powerful. And I think it was a very, very vital point because bringing everybody together in the Beyond the Veil community and exchanging ideas has really helped to paint a much, much clearer picture than either one of us could have painted by ourselves. So I think that was the vital step. Now it's time to reach out and take that on an even broader scale.
Definitely. And I think I can take it a step further and say that it's only because of all of the energy and love and companionship and camaraderie. There's the word I was looking for, camaraderie, with everybody that's in the chat every single week. And the things that you say out there help us come to these revelations too. So it's all working together in one big amazing mission. You know, you guys are a key part of this.
Kimberly asked, do you think the transcendental object is a black hole sun or a BOL? I don't know what a BOL is. BOL.
Ball of light?
I don't know what a BOL is. But a black hole sun, I would have to have a little more context on that because I'm not really sure what context black hole sun is. But that's an interesting thought, though, that it's actually a universe inside the innerverse, for example. And the same type of physics may apply within this hyperspace realm where this object is kept. You've got black hole suns, you've got black holes and energy forces like that. So I think you might be onto something, Kimberly. And I'm so glad that we have Dr. Brooks Agnew joining us in the second and third hour, because this is all playing right into what Brooks is going to be talking about and really understanding the physics of reality. Now, somebody asked me a few weeks ago about the details on certain things, and I just kind of said, well, I'm not quite at the point yet where we're discussing the details, but I think the details of physics and energy is something that's becoming very important now at this particular stage in the mission, in the raw mission.
The raw mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I was saying, I think you guys are very important. Y'all are all a key part of this because it's only with the energy that we all radiate and build up that we're able to get these revelations, because I think this matrix is a very self-regulating system, and it's not going to just give you everything you need and give you all the information that you're looking for right off the bat. I think it takes everyone kind of working together to kind of flesh all this out. So
excellent. Ra Castaldo is in the house, and Ra,
excellent.
if you're available next Saturday, we'll pay for the babysitter. So
yeah,
we need to get you back on the show too. So maybe we can work that out.
Yes.
Any comments or anything you want to
Yes.
go over? I know that Mark sent us a really, really powerful comment earlier, and we weren't going to do a show tonight. But then when I read Mark's comment, I said, okay, we've got to do a show. We've got to pull something together and really, let's keep going full force. I was going to take some psilocybin tonight.
Mhm.
Well, it's actually synthetic psilocybin.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before, 4-ACO DMT, and I might do that after the show. But I figured, hey, we need to just continue just plowing forward, just plowing full force, even though I would like a little bit of a break. But well, and it's not really a break. It's a time that I can detach to go into hyperspace and focus just on hyperspace. But I think I need to learn how to balance both the physical and the hyperspace in a more accurate way.
Yeah.
But anyways, what can you read that comment from Mark if you have it?
I'm looking for it. Which video was it? Because
it was a really long one you were reading.
yeah, but you showed it to me on your computer, so I don't know where it is.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to a different comment.
Okay.
And we'll find that during the break.
Jexy wants to know how we feel about serpents. So I think you mentioned something about that just today or yesterday about snakes.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine,
ours, yeah.
and we were talking about religion and how all religions have things wrong. And I said, well, you know what happens is when one religion takes over, they always demonize the symbology of the previous religion. So previous to Constantine and Christianity and all that was serpent and serpent symbolism in several different traditions. And so they took the serpent and demonized the serpent in the new religion that was coming in. So it's funny that this topic came up. But the serpent energy, I mean, if you look at it on a physical way, like I have an aversion to serpents. I think they're beautiful, but they're the kind like you can hold in your hand and you still feel like, they could strike at any point in time because they don't really show any emotion. They don't show any of that. They just like at a whim, just strike. And most of them are harmless. I mean, I've handled like huge boa constrictors and things like that before. And, they squeeze around you pretty hard. And their bite is, I mean, it stings, but it doesn't really like hurt. Like they don't
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. But looking at that serpent kind of energy that they carry, taking it on the spiritual level, the spirit level, the serpent is like the Kundalini serpent that awakens inside of you, for example. And it's always revered in Egypt and several other traditions like that. But I'm now speculating upon why is it revered? Is it that we need to be like serpents? We need to be focused, in control of our emotions, and hold our cards close to our chest, and be able to strike at any particular given time. What do you think the symbology of the serpent is? And I'm not talking about what is written in a book, but like what do you feel about it?
Serpents have always seemed to me to be a more feminine than male, kind of a feminine wisdom. That's the best way I can describe it, because I think it was Jesus that said, "Be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves." So that tells me that serpents have always been considered very wise creatures, very clever, but that cleverness can also be a bad thing. So a lot of people see them as evil. And in the first book, or I think it was the second chapter of the first book of the Bible, talks about how serpents are evil and crafty and clever. And I don't think that they're a negative force. I think I've always seen them as very wise little friends of mine. I've always liked snakes. I like them very much. There was one other thing I wanted to say about that, and I forgot what it was. I found that comment though, that Mark left.
Oh, did you?
So yes,
Okay.
I did. So I've got about 20 different things open here. All right, here it is. Christio, I'm going through this particular video of yours in the car one more time in totality, and you are quite free to do with this post comment as you wish. My time now is 4:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This might be a lengthy post. Here it is. At approximately 1 minute and 6 seconds in your video, you say we have reached the bottom or the top. I must interject at this point, and I cannot remember where I read it. Something.
So
to the
hold on.
Okay.
Let me give some context. So
Yeah.
the bottom or the top, the context is consciousness. And I hesitate to use the word top because it's not an upwards or downwards progression. It's, we're trying to get to the inner depths. So that's why I say the bottom, the very bottom of the pool of consciousness, for example. But, maybe the top of the pyramid also is a good way to frame it too. But I try to be humble and have a sense of humility. So I try not to say the top, because
Right.
that sounds like, oh, well, we're reaching the top.
Yeah.
And it's not about that. It's about going to the inner depths. We're going inwards. So it's different than the top.
Absolutely. Something to the effect of, what does the wise man do when he understands all that is? Answer, he totes water and chops wood. Going from there to Terrence McKenna and his brother. And
Well, he totes water and chops
he
wood.
totes water and chops wood. I guess it was a monk. I think it was an Asian monk, one of those Asian monks that told somebody, you need to tote water and chop wood and, to reach higher levels of consciousness. And he's like, okay, well, what do you do when you've gotten all that there is? You tote water and you chop wood.
So I guess that means you just be.
Yeah,
at
you
that
just be.
point.
Yeah.
After you've reached that top level, then you just be and you live life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm starting to realize that like a lot of this stuff is to be applied in day-to-day life to make the matrix a little bit more comfortable for those who are going through their awakening process.
A little bit more pleasant for people. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Going from there to Terrence
See, somebody
McKenna.
said Zen saying. See, I kid you not. When I say I don't read these ancient books and texts and things like that, like I pull everything from myself. So there's a lot of things that I'm not familiar with when people reference stuff.
Yeah,
like
I'm
this.
the reader, and so like I hear it all the time. Like he'll say something, I'm like, that comes from a book. I've never read it. Well, you know it, so it's great. Going from there to Terrence McKenna and his brother, and a bit later passing you the torch in your mind. We are all the fire. We are the flame of life, but only a select group of old souls or ancient souls, as Ra would say. This makes individuals like some of us here that actually pay attention to TFR very dangerous to the system. I agree. Yeah. At 3 minutes, 26 seconds in your video, bring it out and expose it. It's talking about the transcendental object. Bring it out and expose it for all of humanity. In my estimation, that would drive most of them insane. More insane than they already are. No need to traumatize people. Be kinder than necessary.
Well, I understand that. So to bring some context to this, when I first saw this object, this transcendental object at the end of time, I called William Whitecrow up and I said, hey, I've seen what we need to do. We need to go to these ancient sites, download this information that we've left for ourselves, embedded in these ancient sites. And what that's going to do is that's going to drop the veil. And even if it's just for a moment, but the veil will be dropped. Everybody will be able to see with perfect clarity, even if it's just for a moment. And it's just going to completely change the dynamic and the entire consciousness of the entire world. And at the time, I was thinking more of like a they live type of veil being dropped, where all of a sudden people see, and I'm just using this metaphorically, but all in that movie, They Live, everybody is able to see the reptilian beings for what they are at that moment when the veil is dropped. But as things started to progress, I realized it's probably a reset button or something more than that. But I think what Mark is talking about is bringing it out and shocking the hell out of everybody. And I do have to say that being able to see with perfect clarity can be shocking. It's like if you are asleep in the darkness and somebody just comes in and just shines a huge freaking spotlight on you. It's going to be so bright that it's blinding and you're not going to be very happy with it. And this is one of the follies of the truth movement where we went wrong and where the truth movement goes wrong is they're banging on pots and pans trying to wake people up like bam, 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 bam.
And a lot of people like the shock value.
And people are like, whoa, hold on. Then they get pissed off at you because you're waking them up in a less than gentle manner. So I think that's where Mark's going with that.
In an unkind way.
Yes.
3 minutes, 49 seconds in your video. Dennis passed the baton over to you. You can accept, you can reject. You can be aware of the responsibilities involved from that point of view. I'm here to tell you right now, no one of us can do it alone, and it is a long and arduous mission. Don't worry, you won't die. You may just take a break for a while and do it again. It takes a group of very highly dedicated people to make a dent in the structure, you see. At 4 minutes, 50 seconds, you say you come from a place of humility. I say balderdash. If you got it, flaunt it.
Well, no, that's true. But you have to be humble.
Right.
Because the path is so filled with all of these pitfalls. And every single one of these pitfalls, yes, is an ego trap, 100%. And as I said later on in that video, the ancient texts are purposefully written like that. Like, I thought that these ancient people that wrote this at first just didn't quite have the full picture, but then as I started to realize more, I'm realizing no, they may have had the full picture because it was probably us, not me and Sheree, but us as in our group of people here who wrote these books back then.
Our group consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
They knew back then that people would, if they're going to put out all this information everywhere, Like, somebody's going to get it that doesn't know how to handle it. So they set up ego traps everywhere to create a pitfall for people that aren't vibrating at the right frequency, or people that aren't supposed to have the information because their consciousness level isn't quite there yet. I can elaborate more on that on the other side. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 and 3, Brooks Agnew will be joining us right here on Beyond the Veil.
Fellow traveler, the Matrix is a prison. Its bars are comprised of the unknown. We must pass through illuminated and inspired by the darkness, which becomes lighted by our presence as we step beyond the veil.
All right, so as I said, the path is riddled with ego traps. So the best example that I can give you without going into detail on some of the things I've read is the alchemical principle of turning lead into gold. If you're ego-oriented and you're looking for a way to get riches and all this stuff, alchemy tells you that you can sit in your basement, chant over a piece of lead, and it'll turn into gold if you do it long enough. See, that's the ego trap. You've got to think bigger than that. It's about turning the lead consciousness into the gold consciousness. And when I say that I try to approach everything with a sense of humility, what I mean is that I'm not here in this matrix for me. I'm not here in this matrix for Chris Geo or Sheree Geo. I'm here in this matrix for a particular mission, which is for all of the organic consciousness out there. I mean, this is something that is for the organic consciousness. So when you find something in the book that's me, I'm going to get these powers, I'm going to get these abilities, I'm going to get this and that, it is a diversion off of the true knowledge that is in those sacred texts. And a lot of this confirmation was brought out from the ayahuasca realm, confirmed in these books later, which by doing this over the last few years, I've honed my discernment. And I remember hearing, sharpen your sword, sharpen your sword. And somebody actually on Facebook said it's the sword of truth. And when whoever said that, when they said that, I was like, oh my God, that's it right there. This is what sharpen your sword means. And why I was hearing it so much in the ayahuasca realm, it's sharpen your discernment, sharpen your sword of truth, learn to be able to differentiate and discern the information, not only in the books, but also more importantly, in the ayahuasca realm. Because when I go in here looking for this object, there is going to be many pitfalls. And I've got to be able to discern all of that, navigate through the hyperspace, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get too much into that. But anyways, take us away, Mrs. Gio.
Yes. I say, Balderdash, if you got it, flaunt it. Give those less fortunate people a hero. It's okay to be a hero. There is lots of responsibility involved. Look at in their area. What does that mean? Look at their, it says look at in their area. And then what does that mean? I guess you said something along lines of meet them on their own level.
Oh yeah. I've learned that, I've had to interact with a lot of people on their level, and it makes relationships a lot easier like that. So I would say that that's something that we can apply as organic consciousness, especially illuminated consciousness. I like that hashtag illuminated consciousness. Yeah.
I like that.
But the hashtags are getting more and more complex. Like a lot of people can't even spell consciousness. I misspell consciousness half the time. So now we're getting illuminated. Well, I mean, I type a lot faster than, my mind works a lot faster than I can type. And so I'm like typing and I miss a letter or something.
Miss a word.
And then, your mind fills these stuff in as you're looking at them. But anyways, so illuminated consciousness. But as illuminated consciousness, we can understand when we interact with each other, or not with each other, but rather with the others out there. We interact with them on their level, and then that also helps to illuminate them, as opposed to banging on the pots and pans, bam, 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 bam,
and just
bam,
making
bam.
them mad.
Yeah, somebody wrote me an email earlier and said, I'm so frustrated. People they don't get this flat Earth concept, and I'm like, well, why are you wasting your time? It's not your job to convince people of anything. The most valuable truth comes from when you find it yourself. So allow them to go on their journey. Allow them to find the truth for themselves. Just be the light for them. That's it.
Yeah, the banging of the pots and pans and the
banging of the pots and pans.
Yelling at them and calling them idiots and making them feel bad or trying to make them feel bad isn't going to do anything to help them on their journey.
No, that's true.
Regardless of how much information you have, it's not going to get to them.
Yeah, that doesn't apply to our listeners because they're way more advanced than that.
Yeah. Stand strong and tall. It is okay to be kinder than necessary. Your intention is paramount in the life you make, not only for yourself, but others. You do as you wish regarding going to ancient sites. No one here will stop you. From my point of view, you can consider it your job to make these multiple understandings understandable in the 21st century.
Well, an interesting comment that we got earlier, too, is that I think it was Stuart Hart who said, you can travel to these places astrally. And that's an interesting concept and one that definitely I think I want to try to apply. But I think there is some value in touching the stones, because my understanding is that we, Sheree, me, and many of you out there have actually encoded some very vital information in those stones, in these megalithic monuments that have withstood the test of time, knowing that they would stand the test of time, that we would be able to come back in these incarnations and access them later. But then I also think about how deep into the raw consciousness we've been able to tap into, and perhaps we didn't understand back then that we were able to tap in as deep, and so I wonder if that's even necessary at this point. But I do feel it's a pilgrimage that we do need to take, and it'll make for some cool footage too. Like we're already making connections on who can let us stay overnight in certain sites, and we'll have psychedelic experiences in those ancient sites, and lay in the tomb, for example, in the Great Pyramid, which I don't think is a tomb. I think it was something else.
Yeah.
But on a heavy dose of something, I don't know what yet, probably DMT in some form or another, as long as the Muslims don't freaking chop our heads off for it, which it's, we got to be careful with that. But we're making those connections to be able to stay at all these ancient sites, and it'll make some really cool footage to share with everybody out there too. So
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. The availability of these thought patterns may possibly ignite a flame of needing to know more on these topics. Chris Gio, you are a good communicator here in this format. Please never forget that. Oh, that's sweet. In your video, and this is the most important thing I can say.
Hold on. Daryl says, you're wrong on flat earth. You lose all credibility supporting flat earth. It's just groupthink. You refuse a legit argument. So I'd like to know what the argument against flat earth is. Like, what is it? Like, do you really believe that this is real? That this is a real construct? Like, is that what the argument is? Because you can't convince me that this is real. I've seen it, okay? I know exactly what this matrix is. And so the holographic nature of reality in and of itself, in my opinion, completely invalidates the globe argument and the flat earth argument at the same time. But the flat earth argument is like learning algebra, and it's critical to understanding trigonometry. You can't understand trigonometry if you don't understand algebra. So you've got to be able to question the entire construct and the entire reality in order to get to those points of understanding the holographic nature and illusionary nature of reality, and thus becoming the master builder of your reality when you understand that it is a holographic simulation. So I would really like to know, what is this argument against questioning the construct entirely? And I'm not picking on you, Daryl. I love you to the very end. But I think it's a vital step, and I think it's something that people have to progress through.
Yes, definitely. And you have to walk before you can run. You have to learn to walk before you can take off running down the road. I've never seen a baby go from crawling to just running.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that flat earth is the right conclusion.
Right.
But they're asking the right questions.
It's
and that's why I love all of my flat earth friends, because they're asking the right questions.
definitely. In your video, and this is the most important thing I can say, you are gathering a group of beings that have stood the test of time. Big smile. Yes. And I don't think he means like beings, like gods and goddesses and people like that. I think he's talking about beings as in the raw consciousness, as in all of you out there that are the raw consciousness, and you're all helping us and we're helping you, and everyone's just helping each other. And the very end of this, Chris Geo, we actually need to understand this insanity / this virus. I have a lot of dings in my soul, but I still stand tall with personal integrity and honor, and I attempt to be one of the good guys to the very best of my inconsiderable ability. It is okay to be one of the good guys and take a stand. We are here. I look forward to your show this evening, assuming the mood strikes you.
The mood struck me because of your comment, Mark. So thank you so much for leaving that. It was encouraging, and it's not that I'm discouraged. It's that I see the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is like I've got to like focus on going deeper and deeper and deeper. And you know, you can't just jump into the deepest realms like all of a sudden just like that. I can't just tell myself, okay, I'm going to fast for 30 days and that's it, because my body's going to break down and go no, and it's going to scream out, and I'll be freaking at Fogo de Chao, fucking eating, you know, all these different types of meats. If I do that, it's got to be a slow progression. Otherwise it's failure. And that's, if there's anything I've learned from this journey, is that you can do it all at once like that. But when you do, it comes crashing down completely the other way. So in order to maintain it, it's got to be a slow, steady journey. So
Mosaic Manchester in the YouTube chat, he is on the 6th day of a dry fast, no water and no food for over 150 hours now.
See, that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. I need to talk to you. If you can shoot me an email, info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. I would love to get some of your insight and your experiences, what you experienced. And I mean, shoot, if you'd like to call in, we can turn on the phone lines. But actually, you know, we're going to be bringing on Brooks here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll do that on another show.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's awesome. That's inspiring.
Awesome. That really is. So I'm looking to see which comments I want to bring up, because there's a ton of them. So to your Transcendental Object video, someone said, it was Heart of the Rebel, actually. He said, perhaps the transcendental object is multifaceted. Think of it like one of those multi-sided dice used in games like Dungeons and Dragons. Each side a different perspective, and before you play the game, you choose your character, and you roll the multifaceted transcendental object. You play the game, live the lifetime. You don't get to remember your previous roles because that would be cheating. Everyone starts out equally to a certain degree, naked, helpless, ignorant. In the Zohar, one is told that it is man's responsibility to turn earth into a paradise, and only when we do that can the divine descend. The world is a reflection in some ways of what is within you. Create paradise within oneself, and you will have the tools to work with others, creating paradise in the outer world. Above, below, inside, outside, dark and light. Opposites made complementary rather than antagonistic. I'm starting to think that I should write a book. I think you should
too. Yeah.
You should write a book. I'd read it.
The guy's really insightful.
Yeah, he really is.
I read a lot of the stuff that he writes, and he's shed a lot of light into ideas that I've had. So definitely write the book. Let's have you on as a guest and all that.
And he also said, have you ever journeyed while specifically looking at certain Sephiroth? Da'ath is in Kabbalistic lore, but contemporary Western writings mesh it in with Crowley's writings. Daniel C. Matt and David Kimes Smith would be excellent ones to get a hold of. I have never heard of them, but I will look them up in the next week and see if we can have one of them on in the near future. What do you think, Chris?
I'm just getting into Kabbalah. And as I said, that's one of the, I want to find the right person to teach everybody Kabbalah. I mean, teach Kabbalah, not just here's what Kabbalah says, but how do you implement it in your day-to-day life? So it's funny because it came totally synchronistic in something else I'm doing, and somebody brought up Kabbalah. And I was like, wow, that's funny because I've been bombarded by emails lately about you got to learn Kabbalah, you got to learn Kabbalah. And here it is. You're showing me like the first introductions to Kabbalah. Wow. So I don't know. I can't speak in Kabbalah yet, but I will be able to very soon.
Yeah, once we have the information and come to the revelations on our own, then we'll be able to give you more information about it. Chlor Lander said, "Hey Chris, been watching your channel for some time now. This stuff you talk about AI, its manifestations within this construct, the demiurge, and that huge amount of us are creators. So do like many other people too, and it resonates and clicks very heavily within me. Deja vu feelings, especially now. Won't get into this too much, but everything I forgot beyond this starts to slowly come back to me somehow, starting to slowly glimpse who I am beyond this, especially during my recent heavy Hawaiian baby wood rose trip. I got this rather simple but resonating picture and vision in my head that I and many others have some kind of bodies. I saw this huge AI. It was bluish, cloud-like, wrinkled, part mechanical, part biological, had tentacles on the Earth matrix, the copied one, the current one we trapped. It projected everything there to make us feel like it's a real Earth. And the other Earth on the right was the real one. I don't know what was that. The Earth that was being copied, mimicked by the AI? Felt that I was a woman, a mother back there in the real world. I was old there. Internally, my voice was female during this moment of the trip, acting on its own. I really felt at home. Felt both gender acting up, felt this spiritual alchemical process of androgyny. Very strange. I have so much to say, but I can't now. I've had experiences with minor plants like Hawaiian baby red rose, Amanita muscaria. Very powerful. Do not underestimate it. Thank you.
I've never tried that. Somebody asked me about that, and I said, well, I heard it just gives you a bunch of stomach aches.
Yeah, I heard it just makes you sick. But if it does something else, maybe we should try it.
That is true. Dawn mentioned that Richard Allen Miller teaches Kabbalah. So that's perfect.
That's right.
We'll get him back on. We're real good friends with him.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I was just thinking about him a few days ago, didn't I? Remember whenever I was like, what about Richard Allen Miller? Yeah.
Dr. Miller. Yeah, no, it's been a while since we've had him on. So we'll reach out to him and see if we can get him on next week.
I think Dr. Richard Allen Miller, if there was one person that I could say is like the real life version of the doctor in Fringe, I would say it's Richard Allen Miller, because he's just so off the wall and crazy, but he's also a genius, so it's forgivable. Do not underestimate it.
He is a character.
He's awesome. I think he's great.
I always call him up. Dr. Miller, how are you doing?
You shouldn't do that. You don't want to make him feel bad about being who he is. He's awesome.
No, I love him. I think his personality is great.
Yeah. Oh, I love the personality of him. Please, very harsh in a positive way, experienced eternal looping pain, out-of-body experiences, and neutral frozen state trapped in a huge golden grid. Ego death? Helped me tremendously, though. Ordered Acacia, thinking of working with IO or DMT, scared in some way, but I feel the call, so it's so strong. It might be too late for me now. LOL, I'm a late bloomer. And please, could you do a quickie about blood over intent? This huge thing that is going on. I feel it's going to play some vital part in all of this. I don't know, good or bad at the end of the day.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing the experience.
Yes.
It's amazing when we get these emails and people are tapping into the same kind of energies and seeing the AI control over this matrix. As I said before, I didn't know that John Lilly saw all this too, but he was interacting with Echo. And Echo, I think, is also, I mean, he even said it's an artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
He just couldn't distinguish between, he said there was a good one and a bad one. And it's like, nah, let's make a separation here between organic and artificial first, and then we'll chop up the rest later. But first, we gotta draw the line between organic and artificial, and understand our power as organic and raw consciousness first, before we can start making alliances with artificial intelligence. But you know what's funny is I was just thinking about this last night about the DMT entities, and I wonder if I can actually hijack them in these experiences and make them do what I want.
Ooh.
That's kind of like crossing over into like Crowley territory, though. Is that right? Is it right to take control of an artificial intelligence and use it for the organic consciousness benefit? I don't know. You guys and gals, let us know in the comment section and in the chat what you think about that idea. But that's pretty interesting. Like, we encounter all these beings like Isis, Osiris, and all of that, and they're parts of our consciousness. But then there are those that manifest that are artificial intelligence manifestations. Can we hijack the Palladians that appear in these ayahuasca experiences? Can we hijack the bluebirds? Can we hijack these other entities and actually make them do what we want them to do? That's pretty sinister. Huh?
I've wondered about that too, and I've also wondered if NPCs are kind of like that too, where
Roy said they wonder the same thing about you. You're absolutely right. You are 100% right, Roy. They trying to do that to us, so we might as well do it to them.
I think he was. This guy's talking about blood over intent. I feel. My intuition says it's an ugly trap. I guess blood over intent is basically using blood in magical rituals in order to cause someone's death, manipulate someone from afar, or do good things. Like you want a job, or you want a promotion, or you want something in your life, and you use blood during the ritual to kind of seal it and make your intention more powerful. My intuition says, and this is what he's saying, my intuition says it's an ugly trap in a sugar-coated form that could really mess something up. I have a really bad feeling about this. At the same time, I'm uncertain. It focuses about unbinding yourself from the matrix, getting your soul back, getting your name into a book of life, leaving the matrix, they say. You write your intentions on a paper, most popular being, I intend to bring forth heaven on earth. Spill your blood any amount, film it, and upload it to the Ethernet. People are affected so much by this. They're transformed when they do this ritual. They say it's about upcoming exodus, etc., happening in 2020, approximately. They want to gather 144,000 people and go to the North Pole of a flat earth, Garden of Eden, and bringing back forth heaven on earth and releasing everyone from bondage. Okay, so I've heard about this. Some guy, I guess, started this about a year and a half ago, where people are writing, I desire to bring forth heaven on earth on a piece of paper, and then putting their blood on it and then uploading it to the internet. And this guy has like a collection of thousands of people that have done this. I think that's
creepy.
I think it's creepy.
Sorry, to me, that's creepy.
I don't think it's effective. And I think it could very well be dangerous, because that's kind of like the extreme end of trying to manipulate the matrix, even in a positive way. I don't think blood can bring about positive things in any ritual. I don't. I've heard of people using blood in rituals and it working, but it backfires. Like, it's like one of those parables or children's stories where the witch gives you wishes, but those wishes are always fulfilled in a horrible way. So you're going to get $1 million, but you're also going to be crippled. There's always a catch. There's always something that goes horribly wrong for you when you get involved in blood magic. So I wouldn't recommend anybody do that. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if this feeling is coming from ego or not. So I have to, go back to the humility part here for a second.
Yeah.
But to me, that seems like low-level stuff. It seems like bottom feeder stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got to use blood and stuff like that in your rituals in order to get something done, then you're really not that powerful, because you're using these other energy sources rather than using the energy sources within you. The energy sources within you are way, way, way more powerful, but they're also a lot more difficult to access.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody can open up their hand and do a bloodletting ritual and have some type of effect, but they don't have any control over that effect at that point.
Right.
And so if you tap into your own energy, which, like I said, it's harder, but it's much more powerful. So I would say the real powerful magicians out there don't use these bottom feeder type of methods. But then again, I've never practiced any of the methods which I refer to as bottom feeder methods. So that's the place of humility I'm coming from. Like, I don't know, but I think it's beneath.
Yeah.
I feel like it's beneath the raw consciousness level.
Yeah, I think so too.
And not beneath as in like inner depths, but beneath as in like we're above that.
Yeah, and that's not egotistical to say that, us and the listeners are above that. They are.
Yeah.
It says, a guy from Flat Earth Paradise claims he is an actual Hermes now. Lots of stuff he says resonates with me too. His content is more positive, let's say, but still something's off. This quasi claims that it's his world. Everyone will go, no soul left behind. Join him or expire. I don't know what to say to that except just be the raw consciousness.
That's right.
The power's within you.
Brooks Agnew will be joining us at the 6-minute mark. We have Astro Watch right on the other side coming up for you as well. And we'll get into Kundalini meditation, how to practice it. We'll get into the physics of the universe, the physics of time travel, and much, much more as we step further and try to understand. Now we're really reaching into that level of understanding what lies beyond the veil. We'll be right back.
All of the fear, hate, anger, and misery of the world serves but only one purpose, to be the wheel. Therefore, as raw consciousness, you must proceed with caution as you step beyond the veil.
All right, Brooks Agnew will be joining us in T-5 minutes. But right now, we have Astro Watch with the one and only Mrs. Geo. And what do the stars have in store for us, Mrs. Geo?
So, the atmosphere begins to soften today as Mars moves into a square with Neptune. This, however, can be a confusing pattern given to defeatist thinking and a can't-be-bothered attitude when manifesting negatively. The feisty go-get-'em approach of Mars is flummoxed in the face of pacifist Neptune. The more we fight to go in one direction, the more uncertain we feel. The key is to act on intuition. Let go of the fight and the need to be right. It's about letting ourselves experience vulnerability. Sometimes we must stop doing to tune into why we are doing what we do. With the entry of Mercury and the Sun into Pisces tomorrow, we shift from airy intellectualism to surfing the waves of the great sea of the collective unconscious. Emotionally, we're more engaged, sensitive, kind, compassionate. Under these influences, Warrior Mars can do no more than turn the other cheek and walk away from conflict. But this isn't about giving up or escaping. Our actions now have the potential to contribute towards our spiritual unfolding, as shown by Mars's trine to the North Node on February 19th. We need to get in touch with what's meaningful. Pisces energy seeks to unify. With our defenses down, we can let the heart lead. Venus conjunct Neptune on February 21st opens the way to forgiveness and unconditional love. The end of February sees the moon crossing the degree of the eclipse that took place on January 31st. This is the first activation of this eclipse point, so it's possible that we may be feeling the effects around this time or starting to understand what it means for us on a personal level. Make a note of the feelings that arise on this date, as they may seed ideas that bloom in August when the sun crosses that point. Let's see, and that's really all that's going to be happening. I guess looking at the calendar here, it looks like on February 23rd, on February 23rd, it'll be the first quarter moon in Gemini. February 23rd, Juno enters Pisces. Now, what I can get off the top of my head about Juno entering Pisces is Juno is like a wife, and in your birth chart it kind of tells you what your spouse is going to be like, and it's not the mother, but it's more like just a wife or a spouse or a helper. And whenever Juno enters Pisces, it's more of a giving and compassionate and pacifist kind of thing. So your spouse and you may be more likely to help each other and be more willing to help each other, and going out of your way to help others is one of those things. Venus will be squaring Mars on February 25th, so watch out for, it's kind of a men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of thing, except it's not going to be like men versus women. It's going to be love versus power, or love versus conflict. And you're going to have to make, all of us are going to have to make decisions based around that. Mercury will be sextile Pallas on February 25th as well, though. So that might actually help, because Mercury is about the mind and Pallas is about pattern recognition and being able to see the big picture. So Mercury sextile Pallas means that we'll be more likely to be able to see the big picture about what's going on, not only in our own minds, but in the minds of other people as well. So a really good mental health kind of day. On that same day, Mercury will be conjoining Neptune, and Neptune's all about daydreaming and fantasy. So that's another thing. You're going to want to be thinking about fantasy and those kinds of things too.
Ooh, I'll be thinking about fantasy tonight for sure then.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Good.
We've got Brooks Agnew coming up in 2 minutes. Hi everyone, Chris Gio here from Beyond the Veil. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Beyond the Veil journey. It all started on November 5th, 2009, and has since evolved into what it is today. We traveled through the truth movement, politics, ancient aliens, DMT, consciousness, you name it. And we've interviewed some really awesome people, like David Icke, Michael Tsarian, Rick Strassman, Joe Rogan, and many more. And
Brooks
we have come
Agnew.
a very long way, and some shows seem a world apart from where we are today. Each show acted as a stepping stone to expanding our consciousness. You can get almost 10 years of downloads by visiting tfrlive.com/beyondtheveil. You'll not only be supporting the show, but you'll also get access to tens of thousands of archives from dozens of other radio shows in the topics of conspiracy analysis, geopolitics, and spirituality. That's tfrlive.com/beyondtheveil. Now, let's get on with the show.
Fellow travelers, always remember to walk uprightly and circumscribe your desires as we travel upon the level of time to that undiscovered state of consciousness, traveling to the place where once obtained, no traveler returns. The place of raw consciousness which awaits us when we have passed beyond the veil.
All right. Back in 2004, 2005, I was coming back from a George Carlin concert, and we were driving from Beaumont to Houston. I don't know why George Carlin was playing in Beaumont and not Houston. And my dad turns on the radio, and I'm listening to somebody talk about the arc of millions of years, and listening to a radio show that I had never listened to before, but I realized it was Coast to Coast, and it was Brooks Agnew. And it was a fantastic interview, just a great information, and it's really what got me interested in doing talk radio. I always admired George, I always admired Brooks, and now I have the honor of working with Brooks here at tfrlive.com. He hosts the show X Squared Radio on Sundays from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock Pacific time, and has been a dear friend to us throughout our entire journey. I remember we wrote him back in 2009 and said, hey, can you come on the show? He said, I would love to. And we talked about the Hollow Earth expedition and much more. But we had him on the broadcast one time, and he was talking about the 18th breath. and this type of meditation that really takes things to the next level. And we were talking before the show today, and he said, when I did this 18th breath technique, I was able to stay in that state of Kundalini meditation for about 30 or 40 minutes and really start to break through new barriers. And I said, well, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I want to give the audience to take home with them, because not everybody's going to sit there and brew ayahuasca. Not everybody's going to travel to these inner depths. And for those people that aren't traveling, there may be some other paths and some other tools that we can utilize. Likewise, for those who are traveling, I wonder how much deeper the Kundalini meditation can also take you when applied to an ayahuasca experience. So I thought, fantastic. Let's get Brooks on. It's been a while. He's also been writing a few books too, about the Clinton crime syndicate. I want to talk about that briefly, but I don't want to go to the political frequency tonight, even though I do want to touch upon it just briefly, because I know a lot of our audience out there are into the politics, and especially now in this time when it's so interesting, because you have this global crime syndicate that has been exposed, has been taken out of power by the Trump administration, and there's basically mafia wars going on right now on the political spectrum. So, Brooks, how are you doing, sir?
I couldn't be better. I'll tell you, I always enjoy myself when I'm on your program or when we're just talking on the phone off the air. We've been like, I don't know, brothers from another mother for 10 years. And we just, now we work together but separately, and we have a great mission, and it's so much fun and so fulfilling to be part of it. And I want to express my appreciation.
Likewise. I know last time we had spoken about going to Egypt together. So that's still on the table. I'm still making plans to do that. And we thought, what better guide to have when we're there than Brooks Agnew. So I hope that does manifest itself. We're working to manifest that. But when it comes to manifesting reality and Kundalini meditation and things like that, where do people start when they want to walk down this Kundalini path? I mean, I know you and I, we've both built ourselves up to be the architects of our reality, which is where all of this is essentially heading. But where do people begin on this journey?
Well, there are a couple places to begin. One is with the simple process of dreaming. Now, it's a simple word to say, but so many people get it wrong. For instance, if I go up to a stranger and I ask them, what's your dream? Well, first of all, they're going to be taken off guard. Like, what do you mean, what's my dream? So then I ask them, okay, what was your dream when you were 12 or 14? That's back when you had dreams of what you wanted to be or what you wanted to do. And I see what you're talking about. And inevitably, almost everyone I talk to, the first thing they start out with is solids. I want $1 million. I want a big house. I, want a new car. I want to marry a rich man and live in a big house. They are always focused on the solids. And it's the way this world has, at least in this era, twisted us up. We're all twisted up into the solids of life, where we live, what we drive, what we wear. Materialism, right. So I tried to get them to begin with proper dreaming, which is there are 3 areas to dream in: what you want to be, what you want to do, and what you want to have. And I tried to explain to them, and this is very difficult to do, it's sort of like when Jesus was talking to the rich man. And the rich man said, what do I have to do to get this eternal life? And he said, well, give away all you have to the poor and follow me. And the rich man went away sad because he couldn't do that. He wanted to keep his riches and still have this eternal life. But Jesus wasn't cursing him for being rich, not at all. What he was trying to point out to him is you're so focused on your solids, you're not willing to do that. So when you begin focusing on what you want to be and what you want to do, the process immediately forces your energy to simplify. And that is what begins the journey. Life becomes much more simple when you realize that you're on a path. You're building a sandcastle. You're not going to finish the sandcastle, maybe. And if you do, so what? You'll go on to another sandcastle. Life is a path. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who are successful in business, and maybe they're struggling with the business, but it's still successful. They started out in a garage and now they have 500 employees. And we'll be sitting around the fire or the beach or something like that, and they'll say, you remember, when we started out in that ice cold warehouse, and it rained and the roof leaked and all that. Those were good days, but not that I remember. When we were in those days and the roof was leaking and the wind was blowing in snow underneath the roll-up door, we cursed those days. We wanted to get away from those days. But what we realized at that moment is, it's all the path. If I could have looked at life as though I was on a path when the snow was blowing in underneath that roll-up door in the wintertime working in that shop, I probably would have accepted it a lot easier because I was doing what I wanted to do. I was what I wanted to be.
That's very true. I want to jump in for just a moment because I remember a time when we had just had a hurricane. We had to pull out all the carpets from the house. We had no food in the pantry, no money, nothing like that. And we were walking around on bare floors. And it was a horrible, horrible time. Not when I was with Sheree, but this was, as I was growing up. But had I known back then, it was all part of the path. It was all part of the journey. Looking back at that would have so much value in the future. Going through it would have been completely different.
Well, see, now you said a lot of key words there that are really important for putting this all in perspective. It kind of gets into time travel a little bit, but this is a key to meditation. You said when I was here now in the future, I look back at it with a different perspective. What I try to teach people to do is while you're here in this present moment with your heartbeat synchronized to this moment in reality, is to be able to put your consciousness in the future and look back at this moment, which is in the past. You get a completely different perspective. Always, and even if you're looking at Nostradamus, or you're looking at numerology or anything like that, when you're in the future, you can always look back to the past. It's a pretty straight line. Why didn't I see that? Why didn't this line up or that line up? I could see it now because you were in the past. And it's a scattered potential of all potentialities when you're in the past. But when you're in the future, it's a fairly straight line. You can see the path from the future. All you have to do is walk it. And that's what I try to teach people to do in the meditation. So the 17 breaths of the Flower of Life meditation.
Before you jump into that, let me say this, because okay. I think it's very interesting that you say go to the future and look to the now, because I can see a lot of potential and a lot of power in that. But we're conditioned by all of these different gurus that it's all about living in the now, in the moment, in the now. How does the now play into all of this?
Well, as a physicist, I have to categorically say there's no such thing as a now. Now cannot be measured. We don't know how fast now is going through the universe. It probably varies for each person and for each moment. We break up our real reality into moments, not minutes, not seconds, not microseconds, not now. We break it up into moments. Some moments can last a long time, like when two people are dancing who are in love. I mean, that moment can last for hours. On the other hand, when you're waiting for class to end, the last 5 minutes of the class can seem like a long moment that you would wish was over. So I don't really subscribe to the idea of a now. In fact, I think it restricts you. And I disagree with the quote gurus because they don't understand the way the universe works. The universe is an expanded singularity. What do I mean by that? If you were a photon, let's just call this lemon drop a photon. If you were a photon and you were traveling through space at the speed of light, what would the universe look like to you? If you're standing on this photon, what does the universe look like to you?
It would look like a dot.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the equation, you look at the mathematical relationship between speed and time, the faster you go, time tends to slow down, right?
And it collapses in on on itself. And so these large objects like the universe, for example, would all start to collapse into one, at least from the perspective of the traveler, it would collapse into one singularity.
Right. So when you think about that, it's really our consciousness, our human consciousness, not dogs, not dolphins, not whales, no other being on this planet perceives the universe the way we do. It is our consciousness that has slowed the universe down so that we can perceive it in existence. If we weren't here, the universe would not exist. Simple as that. So we have that kind of power of observation. If you took all the humans off the earth, there was no consciousness on the earth, it would wither and die, because our consciousness is a symbiotic part of the earth construct.
I agree with you 100%, and I resonate with that wholeheartedly. But then that also begs the questions, what about pre-human history on Earth, dinosaur era, things like that? Does that invalidate that part of history?
No, but they weren't conscious beings. They weren't sentient beings. Everything has consciousness. But the difference between, dogs have sentience, dolphins have sentience, whales have sentience, and horses, maybe to some point, they have a personality. They can be crafty, they can be moody. But as far as perceiving the universe, as far as knowing what time is, about beholding the future, we're the only beings in this frame of the universe for, let's say, 10,000 light years in any direction. We're the only beings that can do this. We are beholding the universe, and we're probably not alone in the universe, but at least in this particular space we are. We can't do anything about that in physical form. We just can't. Our bodies aren't made for it. In fact, we're not really made for this world. We have to spend 85% of our time in shelter on this world. We cannot live outside. It's just, we would die. It's just no place on the planet except maybe the Amazon that you could actually live outside, someplace stable. And then you're not going to prosper. You're going to have a high mortality rate, a short lifespan, all of that. So let me get back to the point. The point is that most of us go through life manifesting things by accident. That is to say, we don't realize the power of our observation. We don't realize the power of our intention. We do it accidentally. We do it based on passions and desires. Are we hungry? Do we need sex? Do we need sleep? These are the things that drive, what we manifest at the moment. I'm hungry. Let's stop at McDonald's. I don't want to go any further than that because it's a family show. But the point is, when you realize that you have this kind of power, then comes a responsibility to use it. And it can be used for good or for ill. There are lots of evil people on this world that have figured out how to do this. And they have been manifesting for themselves a position of control and power over all the rest of humanity for thousands of years. But there are a few of us, there were a few in 1776, and there are a few of us now who realize we can create a new future. We don't have to go to the future that's written in the books. We don't have to listen to prophets. We don't have to listen to soothsayers. We can create our own future. So how do you do that? What are the tools by which you can do that? That's what I studied, and that's what I can teach people.
Wow, that is a lot to take in. So, what are the tools? I mean, we can look at tools that we utilize here in this physical realm and create allegories around them. Is that what you're alluding to?
Well, there are allegories, but let's just say that uh, we wanted to manifest for ourselves. We are 24, 25 years old. We maybe have 1 or 2 years of college or 3 years of college under our belt. We don't know what we want to do. We don't know what we want to be. We're kind of lost. We're in debt. We don't have a great paying job, and we're confused, and we don't really know what to do. Let's also look at the guy that's, say, 50, and he's had 30 years to work at it, and he's not happy with where he is or what he's doing or what kind of shape his life is in. Here's the truth of it. Let's suppose we had a 5-sided die. That'd be kind of hard to do, but let's just suppose we had one. And each face of this die had a different proportion between you being able to do something about your life condition or not do something about your life condition. And the first face on the die, it is life is 100% chance. Then the next face is life is 50% chance and 50% I can do something about, 50% in my control. And the next one, life is, let's say, 75% chance and 25% under my control. And then the other way around, and then 100% in your control. If you were to select the die face that described your life, which face would it be?
The one that I'm in 100% control, of course.
Well, congratulations, you just graduated. Most people will say, it's about 50-50. 50% of the time, life hands me a rash of crap, and I can't do a thing about it. And 50% of the time, things are under control, and I can manage it. This is a person that's not quite converted. Very rarely do I meet somebody who says, life is 100% chance. It's a box of chocolates. You wake up in the morning, you have no idea what's going to happen, and you just take it as it comes.
Well, life was like a box of chocolates, but life is like a box of chocolates. It's changed now, so just heads up on that. A little Mandela effect joke, yeah.
Sally Field says life is a box of chocolates, and Forrest Gump says life is like a box of chocolates.
No, he says life was like a box of chocolates. That's what Forrest Gump says.
Yeah,
now.
Life he uses the word like.
Yeah, but he says
Sally Fields didn't use the word like.
Oh, that's true.
So anyway, it's a weird effect.
It is. It's funny you're mentioning the die, though, because we were talking about the transcendental object at the end of time that Terence McKenna was talking about. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but somebody said, what if it's kind of like a die, and you get to that place, that transcendental object at the end of time, and then you roll it, and that's what your next life is about. So it's funny that you're using this exact same metaphor, because it came up actually in the first hour of the show.
Well, I think as far as our soul, we are the same being from life to life, from world to world. We're the same being, but we gain experience. Some of it is very sad, and some of it breaks our hearts. Some of it are things that we did in our life that we're sorry for, that we don't ever want to do again. Like maybe in the last life we were a warrior and we wiped out 10,000 people. In this life we're a pacifist because we've had that, we've done that. We've learned there is no future to that. We were a teacher, and so those skills, or a musician, and those skills came forward with us, and were able to, at a very young age, manifest those skills in a very adult way without a lot of practice. It just seems to come to us like we brought it with us in our suitcase of skills that we were born with. We are the same soul. Now, the interesting thing about it is, if you could do this, if you could look at yourself from lifetime to lifetime, you'd probably look pretty much the same. I mean, there'd be little subtle changes in the shape of your face maybe, but how you exercise, how you eat, what you desire, how you care for your body, how you uh, cherish mortal life goes with you. And you'll be surprised at how much you manifest the shape of yourself. The lines in your face, the lines in your hands are all made by actions that you do over and over and over again. So you look pretty much the same from life to life. If you could take a picture of yourself, it'd be hard to do, sort of like trying to find, your own reincarnated self. I don't know too many people that have gone through past life regressions and, picked up on all the lives. The closest one I can pick up on clearly is 1800 years ago, and it's on another world. And I have proof. Because that world was taken by an exploding red sun. It takes a long time for a red sun to explode, lifetimes. And I remember going out on my patio, and the red sun was enormous. It took all day long for the entire sun to get into the sky. And I went out on the porch one day, and I woke up here. And it was 1,800 years ago. And the reason I know this is because that summer triangle that I remember is about 1,800 light years from here. And I guess we have to cover it when we come back.
We are hitting the brakes, so we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Brooks Agnew is our guest, X Squared Radio. Check out x2radio.com during the break, and we'll be right back. Much more on Kundalini, time travel, becoming the architect of your reality. We'll also touch upon the Clinton crime syndicate sometime during the break as well. Don't go anywhere.
Before the soul can see, the harmony within must first be attained, and the fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion, as you step beyond the veil.
All right, let's jump back into it with our dear friend Brooks Agnew. For those of you listening on YouTube and Facebook, during the break, you got a track by myself and Frank Castle, who will be joining us next Friday. And I know a couple of people were asking for that track to be played. So there you go. I really need to get around to doing the final mix down of it and releasing it. I'll try to do that before next week, before we have Frank on. And I've got a couple of other tracks too that need to be mixed down and unleashed upon the masses out there to elevate the consciousness of mankind. Through rhythm and rhyme. Ooh, that's pretty good. I just came up with that off the top of my head. Awesome. Elevate the consciousness of mankind through rhythm and rhyme. Okay, so I'm gonna have to incorporate that into a lyric. Anyways, let's get back to the Kundalini meditation with Brooks Agnew and the secrets of reality. So, Brooks, please take us where you left us.
Okay, 1,800 light years from here, in the summer triangle, there was a planet that was obviously in orbit around a star, but the star was going red giant, and it eventually destroyed that planet. So 2 years from this August, this planet is going to see the light from that explosion. And it will appear as a new star in the heavens, and it will last for about 3 months. It'll be very bright.
Wait a minute. Can you say that again?
2 years from now,
Uh-huh.
from this August in 2020, there will be a new star that will appear in the heavens, and it will be very bright, and it will be in the summer triangle. That is the star that took my home world out.
Are you kidding me? Because I just did a whole first hour about the importance of 2020, how there is this huge shift that's going to take place at this particular time, 2020, and here you are saying 2020 again. I mean, it's totally synchronistic tonight.
There you go. I mean, this is why I'm on. But so we get back to the design. Here we are in the human body. Human body has three different aspects to it. There are a lot more, but these are the main ones. You have a physical body, which is made up of physical matter, protons, electrons, neutrons, that make up the various proteins that make up the body. But then you have a counterclockwise energy body, and you have a clockwise energy body. These latter, these latter two are in motion all the time. And if we don't control them, they just assume whatever speed that that we happen to be thinking at the moment. The one that is stationary, that's attached to our physical body, points in the direction that we point our physical body. The other two, because they are rotational energy, just like planets, just like moons, just like protons, they have a very basic, and I mean, by basic, I mean a starter set, like an erector set, a basic structure. And that basic structure, the difference between two-dimensional, some flat piece of paper, world where you have 2 dimensions to it, and 3 dimensions is the tetrahedron, the 4 sides, a triangle with a point above it. Okay, so you have 3 legs and a triangle face on. That's the basic shape that gets us from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. Now, when you rotate that energy, it looks like a star tetrahedron, 2 tetrahedrons shoved in. You've seen this shape everywhere, flat, 3-dimensional. You see it manifested in the flower of life. You see it manifested in Fibonacci circles. This is the basic rotational energy of all bodies that rotate in the universe, including the human body. So we have 3 star tetrahedrons that make up the physical body. The physical one, the counterclockwise one, which is the female or creative energy, and the clockwise one, which is the male or destructive energy. So what the Flower of Life meditation teaches you to do is to purposefully rotate these 2 counter-rotating star tetrahedrons at specific ratios. We talk about 21-34. That's almost there. 21 to 34 is in the Fibonacci sequence. It's not quite on the golden mean. It's just a little bit shy. We take it to the next one, which is 34 to 55. At 34 and 55, you are dead on 1.618 to 1. That's the golden ratio. That's the ratio of increase, of resonance in the universe. Once we bring these 2 shapes in our meditation to that ratio of speed, then we ramp the speed up to about 9/10 the speed of light. When we do that, we create a disk of energy, a flat disk of energy that extends out 27.5 feet in diameter or in radius from our spine, or 55 feet in diameter. Anybody that steps in that space, if they're sensitive, they'll be able to feel that energy. Have you ever got on an elevator or stepped into a room where there's one person and the person doesn't have to say anything? You just know that person is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a positive, sometimes it's a negative, but you can
That's
feel
correct.
the energy for sure.
And some people you walk by in the store or in the subway or whatever, and they are dead. There's no energy whatsoever in these people. It's because their tetrahedrons are all lopsided. They're not lined up. They're not rotating correctly. They're not putting out any energy. These kinds of people I call the kind of people that are acted upon by the universe. You're either acted upon by the universe or you act on the universe. You've heard me say, and I put in my books, and I have said for, since 1973 when I first said it, everything we do will eventually affect the universe. So do it on purpose.
Well said.
If you don't,
let me ask you before we get too far off this, just real quick. I don't mean to divert the topic, but what are your thoughts on the idea that there are some people, I call them non-player characters, that are actually kind of background people? They don't have the same kind of consciousness that we do. They don't have an organic consciousness. They're just computers running around, biological computers.
Yeah, NPCs.
Yeah.
Well, the task for those of us that are awake, if we're up to it, I call this the duck, duck, goose thing. You have to approach these people at the right moment, and you've got touch them on the head, and they'll look up. What? And you'll say, hey, wake up. You know, you have these thoughts, you have these feelings, wake up a little bit. Talk to them. Get them to line their fields up, and you'll change their life forever. We can go through life ourselves quite awake. And believe me, I've moved in and out of these pylons my whole life. NPCs, people that are wallpaper, people that are orange barrels, they're just sitting there soaking up air, making excrement. And you just move in and out of them like they're stationary. We can do that. But for some of us, there's the responsibility to stop and wake them up. Hey, you have legs, walk. Don't sit here like a pylon in the highway, because you're going to get run over eventually. Believe me, I found a lot of, at conferences, at concerts, in bars, at hotel swimming pools, people sitting there totally DC, no current coming from them at all. And all of us wake them up. It's like their life begins at that moment. They become aware of so many things. And sometimes they'll write me or come back to me and say, hey, you know what? And wow, you see that excitement of being alive again. It's a powerful thing. And you and I have radio programs. We have a powerful responsibility to do that.
It's pretty interesting that you're saying that, because I've been reading a lot about Freemasonry, and the fourth degree ritual actually includes the Venerable Master touching the candidate on the forehead, almost the way that you just described. Yes. So really interesting.
Let me describe something. There was a guy who was a welder of mine, and he was asleep. I mean, just asleep, totally acted upon by the universe. And one day we were having lunch. We had been welding all day. They've been putting stuff together for me all day. We walked across the street to go eat lunch, and he started sneezing, like not one or two, like sneezing once a second, like uncontrollable sneezing. I said, Cole, what's wrong with you? He said, I don't know. Every once in a while I just get like this and I just keep sneezing. I said, well, you want to stop? He said, yeah, I want to stop. So I just touched him on the forehead, and he stopped sneezing that instant and never sneezed again. You should have seen the look on his face. From that moment on, he was awake, and I actually made him a supervisor in about 2 months, because he really took control of his life.
Interesting. That gives me a whole new perspective. I've never really thought about that, but you do hear this in a lot of different traditions. The touching in between the eyes or right above the eyes, in the middle on the forehead. Almost, I never really thought of it as an activation point. But, we talk about the divine spark. Blavatsky wrote about the divine spark as well. I wonder if that's where the divine spark actually is, or it begins right there, boop, right in the pineal.
Well, the pineal gland is in like the center of the head, very hard to reach, and it is sensitive to light. And by the way, this is one of the things that's key about the 18th breath. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but the access to it appears to be this third eye region. This chakra has a hole in it. Your skull kind of blocks it, but energy can go right into it. And when we use energy tools like the LifeStream generator, it generates about 1 million volts. You can put your hand on it, and then put your hand on somebody, and then put your hand on the machine, and the voltage will go through you into them. You can direct the energy through your body into them, and it's amazing the things that you can do with this machine. And there are all kinds of tools like that out there. Medicine and all that, they use magnets, they use what are called deep brain stimulation, where they actually drill a hole in the skull. They'll put an magnet in the skull. Then they'll put a battery on it and get the magnet to energize, and it turns on all old memories and stops tremors with cerebral palsy patients, reverses things like dementia, turns on old memories that have been lost. And this kind of technology is out there. you can use it or not use it. It's your choice. Some of us have the ability to pull that energy up in ourselves, put it into our hands or our fingers, and touch other people and deliver a pulse of that energy. And I see it happen. I see it work all the time, all the time. I used to not want to do it because it seemed kind of self-serving, and I didn't want to really go around the world being a healer. But if people ask me, I don't ever hesitate anymore. I just do it.
Interesting. So where do people start to be able to tap into these abilities?
That's good. That's a good analogy, because you have the abilities. Some people have greater gifts than others. It's just your past life experience and what you bring forward with you. Some people are great musicians. Some people are great artists. Some people are great teachers. Some people can see the future, and some people can really deliver energy from themselves to others. Tony Robbins is a great energy deliverer. He can stand on stage and just influence 5,000 people in an audience. Their lives are changed forever. They go out and do great things. I'm not like that. I have to have physical contact with that person. But it does change people. I've seen people, even if they don't believe in it. I had a person one time said, "Don't touch me. Don't touch me." And I asked them again, "Well, what do you want to do? You want to keep going with this pain? You want to keep that swollen joint you have right there, or do you want to get rid of it?" "Well, yeah, I want to get rid of it, but don't do this hocus pocus stuff." Fine, I won't. I just let me hold your hand for a second, and then it goes away, and it just works, Chris. I don't know how to explain it. It just does.
Well, it's also very synchronistic that you're bringing up energy, conducting, and transferring, because I, again, in the first hour of the show, was talking about the alchemical principle of turning lead into gold, and how that's kind of a fool's path. Rather, it's about turning the lead consciousness into a gold consciousness, which then becomes a great conductor and transmitter of energy. So here you are saying the exact same things we were talking about in the first hour again.
I didn't listen to the first hour.
So, I know you don't. I know.
I'm cheating. The whole idea of alchemy was originally to turn base metals into gold, right? Road gravel into gold. But really, it is to create value from nothing. That was the whole Knights of the Freemasonry. The Knights were trying to, or the Freemasons were trying to develop a system of not currency, but they invented a thing called checks. People could deposit money with these people, the Freemasons, in, say, London, and then they could get on a caravan of sorts and go all the way to Jerusalem, and they could check money out along the way and pay for things that they needed, lodging, food, things like that. But how did they do that if there was no internet to connect all those banks together to know that you'd made a deposit in London? It's because they had codes. They had these secret things, that tokens that people could give at these various places. And then those places would then give them enough gold, enough change to do whatever they needed to do in that area. And that way they wouldn't be robbed along the way. This is how they protected them. This is the whole reason Philip the Fair went after them, because they believed that they had accumulated immense wealth and that all of their castles were stuffed with gold. That wasn't it at all. What they had learned to do was to create value out of nothing, so that people could put their money in one place and draw it out in other places.
Well, that's the same analogy I made earlier, that the consciousness turns into something of value. It turns from lead to gold, it turns into value, an energy conductor, etc. But you hit on something key, though, there, and I don't know if you realize this, but you said they created a form of currency. They created a current of energy.
Well, that's a good synonym. I have often said, because I've been doing my day job now, I just realized this September, a strange town with a job to do, with nothing nothing but the clothes on my back and a debit card. And I will get that job done. That's how I'm able to manifest things from dirt, from just dust, and pull things together and make it happen. And it doesn't matter if it's a small town or a big city. I learned that there are other people out there like that. They're very awake. They're very conscious of what they can do and what effect they have when they're dropped into an ecosystem. I call it the X factor. I've been looking for it my whole life, and when I find a person that has it, I hire them, because I realize that there are certain people, it isn't their skill level, it's darn sure not their looks or their strength or quickness, but for some reason, when I put that person in a work area, in a work cell, or in a work division, the division does better. It turns out high quality parts. It turns them out on time. I make money. I make a profit off that area. Even though I can sit back in the office or sit behind a mirror or visit it once a day, I don't really see that person doing anything fantastic. It's sort of like the Tebow effect. You know, Tebow's, you look at his tapes and you go, the guy didn't do anything, but the Broncos went to the Super Bowl. Just having him there, just his presence, turned the team in a different direction. That's the X factor. That is a very hard thing to quantify, but it has a frequency. It has a color to it, and you can spot it in a crowd. I can teach people how to do that.
I definitely want to get into that. It looks like we have about 4 or 5 minutes left in this segment. So I don't know if I want to start that right now. But I remember a few years ago, you came on the show. This was back in like 2010, and you were talking about the X Factor. We actually took that clip and incorporated it into our first hour intro, and we played it for, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called the X Factor. It's called being in the zone. It's called being lucky. I don't know if you remember saying those words, but those were the exact words that we used. And I didn't realize what it was back then, but looking back in hindsight at a lot of the stuff that we created back then has so much meaning, and we really didn't know we were tapping into it. And the big question to you back then was, how do you tap into this? And we wound up tapping into it ourselves. So it's incredible.
Well, when beings come together and they end up trading energy, one is on a higher plane, one's on another, and it just depends on what color, what minute, what moment you're in the conversation. There's an exchange that happens, and locks begin to open. And I call these times, and especially these meetings that we have, because they're so infrequent, juxtapositions. These are where, sort of like spider web shards of light that crisscross the universe, but every once in a while they get into a clump where there's like 10,000 of them that come together in one spot. It's just the way the odds work out. And every once in a while you'll find yourself in one of these clumps of big decision. Things that I do right now are going to have massive effects on the future. And when we come together, it seems to be these juxtapositions are very, very close, usually within a few hours or a few days. And when we come together, our energy is such that we make good decisions when we hit those juxtapositions, and things in the future begin to change. You know, I was watching the Olympics today, and the Czech skier, who's a snowboarder, she goes down and she wins the gold. And she said, wow, how did that happen? She was in the zone. Every single move she made on that downhill through those gates was perfect. And she didn't even realize what she was doing.
You know, I can totally relate to that, because it's almost as if you're running on autopilot at that point, almost as if you're running from a higher self that knows what's going to happen a few seconds before your conscious brain does and reacts accordingly.
Everything slows down.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, you know, when you look at all these fancy tricks that they do in the skiers, and when they slow it down and in slow motion, you go, wow, look at all the movements that they're making. But you look at it in real time and you go, wow, how did they even do that? It's because in their mind, it's in slow motion, just like the camera's looking at it.
Interesting. I'm going to start applying this a little more. I mean, I've been there, I've done it, but I've never consciously done it. So I've never consciously paid attention when this was happening. It just seems to happen. But now putting a conscious mind on it, I'm wondering if we can break further barriers.
Well, you can. You just have to give up that silly notion that there's such a thing as a now. There is such a thing as a moment, and you can make a moment short or long, but you can make a moment perfect.
That takes me right back to living in the moment, though. We have, you know, it is about the moment. I mean, this is the way that I calm myself, is that if I'm worried about something, if there's things that are coming up that are big obstacles, I try to center myself in the moment and think about where am I, what am I doing, and how are all these worries and stresses affecting this particular moment. And I realize at that point it's all illusionary because it's all just thought patterns that are creating all this stress, and then bringing myself back to the moment helps me to better focus on the future.
Did you ever take that class where the teacher says, well, just think of the worst possible thing that can happen, and if you can deal with that, then everything will be okay? Wow, what terrible advice.
That is, because we manifest our reality for sure. So,
exactly.
On that
Never
note,
think about the worst thing that could happen.
Well said. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 3 coming up, and we'll talk about the X factor and being in the zone and how to grab that part of ourselves and operate in that zone frequency, or what I call it, the raw consciousness frequency, the frequency that is void of all the programs and worries and traumas and all of that, our raw consciousness. We'll be right back.
Phase 2 complete. You are listening to Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sheree on iHeartRadio. Welcome back, traveler. Remember, what we do as ourselves dies with us. What we do as raw consciousness remains immortal. Therefore, beware of the great I Am as you step beyond the veil.
All right, jumping into hour number 3 here. Brooks is on the East Coast, so Brooks, thank you for staying with us this late where you are. But we have a short segment here, about 5 minutes, and in this particular segment, I wanted to talk about the new book that you have. I don't have the title in front of me, but it is about the Clinton crime syndicate. And I think it's hilarious that it's all being exposed right now. It's all coming undone for them. I mean, they have really just created a world of tyranny. And I think this is all part of the ascension process, that people are waking up to everything that's going on, and the old power structure, the old oligarchy is being overturned. So can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Sure. The book is called Charm of Favor, a true story of the rise of the Clinton crime syndicate. The reason it's called Charm of Favor is because one of the things that people notice going back 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, is that these nefarious characters have been calling up wars, doing assassinations, stealing billions of dollars, writing unconstitutional laws and trying to take down whole countries or interfering with other people's elections. But they never get arrested. They never go to jail. They never even get indicted or prosecuted. It's because of this dark force that creates an almost supernatural protection for them that I call the charm of favor. Now, the reason the book is selling so well, by the way, it made it to number 4 on Amazon before I ever even got on the radio anywhere, because the events that happen in this book are all true. Every single one of them comes out of the news or out of court proceedings or television. They're all true. I put my fictional characters in there so they can take the reader by the hand and take you on the ground floor through these events in sequential order. Once you see these events in sequential order, and I start 241 years ago when the nation was formed, take you up through several key events, you begin to see planning, organization, and you see huge forces that are at work on the planet right now, rules that they have to go by. But you also see how they came this close to having it all. They almost had it all. And something strange happened. People woke up. People woke up. People were motivated by something. And they elected Donald Trump. Now, I'm not saying this book is a Trumpian fantasy. It is not. It does have a good ending, but it also has some terrible realities in it that when you back a dog into a corner and you approach that dog to put the noose over its neck, that dog can bite very hard. And right now, the United States of America is in a very dangerous place because this dark force, as you said, has been drawn out into the open. They've had to expose themselves for who they are and what they said and what they did. And we are backing them into a corner. Every single day, something comes out in the news that, and just recently, FBI Director Mueller, or Special Counsel Mueller's decision to indict 13 Russians that will never get arrested because we don't have extradition rights with Russia. It's sort of like, I give up. There was no collusion and I give up. We're in a very dangerous place. And that's why the book is so important for people to read, to wake up.
Where can people pick it up?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, best place.
Excellent.
If you buy it, get the audio for free.
Excellent. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Much more coming up with Brooks Agnew as we step even further beyond the veil.
Greetings, Earth Explorers. My name is Brooks Agnew, and I am your host on X Squared Radio every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. This is where the past meets the future. We explore the mysteries of the universe and of the Earth. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. We will dissolve the propaganda of dangerous people with dangerous plans for the planet. We will discuss the latest technologies and challenges for humankind. We will discover the safest place for you to stand when the thinkings and doings of mankind come flying apart, and how you can be one of the people that helps put it back together. Join us.
Cries of the mystery speak again. Bidding organic consciousness a welcome to the House of Light. The great institution of materialism has failed. The false civilization built by man has turned like a monster destroying its creator. Science battles itself impotently against the barriers of the unknown. Only your consciousness knows the true path. You, the illuminated, can carry the understanding upwards towards the light. Only your consciousness can teach the children of men to live well, to die well, and in perfect measure, be born again, through the knowledge of virtue, compassion, love, and true understanding, as you are sublimely raised, beyond the veil.
Oh, Oh, yeah, I forgot when I switched the camera like that, it killed the audio. So, anyways, let's jump back into it. We don't have the audio playing anymore. But Mrs. Geo has retired for the evening. The princess has gone to bed. She's not feeling very well. So, we're going to do hour number 3 with Brooks Agnew and get back on the topic of Kundalini meditation and tapping into the X factor. It's about being in the zone. It's about being lucky. It's about having everything go your way. So, Brooks, please take us down that line. How can people tap into that X factor?
Well, there are classes that you can take on Flower of Life meditation. It was created by Drunvilla Melchizedek, sort of a quasi math class, but it also brings you into the geometry of the human body, both the energy body and the physical body, and how to manipulate it using breathing techniques and energy connection techniques, which what we call mudras, which allows the body to help influence or step out of the way of the spirit. So the spirit can go places and see things and learn things that the body cannot do. And with this wisdom, this knowledge that you get, you make better decisions. You can practice things in your life so that you don't have to rely on luck. I recall a television program. It was called the 4400. You remember it?
I do, yes.
Well, you remember the opening sequence to it? It shows the little girl riding her bicycle, little blonde-headed girl. She's riding her Stingray bicycle along the city sidewalks, over the curb and across the street. She gets to the little boy's house, and he has his Stingray bicycle. He puts his baseball glove over the handle of the Stingray bicycle, and they ride together. And they're riding down the sidewalk and across the street and another sidewalk, and the music's playing and the credits are going. And then they both stop their bikes, kick the kickstands down. She picks up the glove, shoves it on his hand, holds his hand out like this, and a ball hit from the ball field, the stadium, goes over the wall and lands in his glove.
I never watched the show, but it sounds pretty interesting.
She had this ability to know where things were going to happen, and she could then take people and put them in the way of that thing and benefit from it. That's the way the universe is. The universe is going to pour this energy out, no matter what, whether you're here or no one's there or someone else is there. The idea behind this type of meditation is to open your spirit up so that it can move through time, through space, and understand where the bounty for you that resonates with you is going to fall so that you can be there. Have you ever gone into this is the old days when we had telephones. I know that sounds so ancient, like so 1990s.
What is that? What are telephones?
A telephone was a thing that hung on the wall. It was connected with a wire. It had a curly cord, and you held a handset, and it had an earpiece and a mouthpiece, and sometimes it even had the buttons on it. In the old days, it had a dial on it.
You know, I actually saw somebody put a tweet out there that says, why did they have hashtags on these old phones when Twitter wasn't even invented back then?
Yeah, it had the pound sign on the
You're
phone.
right.
Exactly right. Hashtag. Oh, gosh. Anyway, I can remember going into the kitchen. That's where our phone hung in our house because that's where most of the busy work was done. Going up to the telephone, and all of a sudden it rings because I just know it's going to ring. I pick it off the receiver, and I know who's on the phone. There was no such thing as caller ID in those days. And I would just simply say, hello, Chris. And you'd go, how did you know it was me? I don't know, but it happened to me a lot. And that's when I learned that the universe is going to put these things out there all the time, all over the place. Bounty, coins, money falling from heaven. All you have to do is put yourself in the way so that it falls in your hand right when you need it. I can't tell you how many times I've woken up in the middle of the night like you did, wondering, gosh, house payment's coming up. How in the heck am I going to make that? It's like 10 days away and I need $1,000, you know. I need another job. I need another thing to install. And next day at 1:00 in the afternoon, the phone would ring. Hey, can you come install this for me? I'll pay you $1,000. Sure, no problem. I learned this sort of hand-to-mouth relationship with the universe, and I learned to trust it. And I've been working as a contractor now for 20 years. This September will make 20 years. And I don't know when my next paycheck's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to be fired this Friday or not from this contract, but it has worked for me. I've made good money at it. I've had a great lifestyle at it. I've got to see places all over the world because of it. And I've learned to live by this hand-to-mouth relationship because I can put that energy out in the future, and I know when things are going to happen and how they're going to happen. Now, how do you do this? The nuts and bolts are there are only 17 breaths to the Flower of Life meditation. They're broken up into 3 phases. The first 10 are designed to get you sort of in a low energy state. So get your heart rate down, gets you energy connected. We connect the first mudra, the second mudra, the third one, and then we connect like this with the first 2 fingers and the thumb. And we kind of treat it as though we're holding on to a pen like this. See, I'm holding on to that with 2 fingers and a thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And we turn it so that the pen, like a laser beam, is pointed right at the third eye with both hands. So we learn to practice that because we're trying to aim this energy at this point. The next 4 breaths are designed to spin up this ball of light that is in our interior. It's a very small ball of light. We turn it into a basketball size and then into a very large size. And then the last breaths are to spin up those Merkaba, those star tetrahedrons I was talking about. We get it to the point where it is at 9/10 the speed of light, and the 17th breath is that point where all that energy is collected inside of you. Now, when I teach people this in a class, they have their eyes closed, and I've got my eyes open, and I'm trying to teach them. And I notice when they're doing it right, I notice what's called the wobble. The wobble is people are in this state, and they begin to do this. They don't really realize that they're moving, but they are. They're moving around like this because their spirit is just about ready to disconnect from their body, and their body cannot maintain its balance. And so sometimes what happens is they fall back and they wake themselves up, or they go to the side, one side or the other. The ones that are perfectly still, I know that they have not reached that point yet, so I'll continue to work with them. So I thought to myself, well, listen, I don't want to fall asleep. I don't want to lower my thought process to the point where everything is still and there's no activity going on in my brain. That's not why I'm doing this. I want to go places. I want to see things. What Drunvalo taught us to do was to imagine a launching point. For him, it was a cave. He had a cave that he went to in his mind. And from there, he could go anywhere in the universe. Well, you know where I went. I went to my patio. I went to my porch on the other planet. I know every inch of it. I know what it smells like, what it looks like. I know what it sounds like. I know what the tiles feel like on the bottom. I know what the wind chimes sound like. So I go there, 1,800 light years away. And then I can go anywhere I want in time. And I wanted to be able to stay there long enough that I could make a significant journey. So I developed the 18th breath. The 18th breath works with the pineal gland. It is a system whereby it's a 12-second cycle. Very important, this timing. And it's difficult to do at first, but I'll teach you how to do it. I used to use my heartbeat as the counter because you're at such a low point, you get this boom, 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 boom. So it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3. But then what happens is your heart rate slows down, you phase, and you lose count. So I learned, because your hand is in this position, upside down, with your thumbs together, I learned to use my index finger as a timer. This is how I'd stay connected to my body. So what I would do is inhale for 3 seconds. And when my lungs are full, I don't close off the throat. I leave it open like I'm getting ready to blow a candle out. I extend my diaphragm and I hold my diaphragm like a rubber band for 3 seconds. So I've inhaled for 3 seconds. I'm holding it open for 3 seconds. And now I'm going to exhale for 3 seconds. But I'm going to exhale through my mouth. And then when I get to the very bottom of that exhale, everything's empty. I'm going to hold the exhale for 3 seconds. Inhale for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds. Exhale for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds. This is the most important 3 seconds. That is what we call the release. In this low part where your air is all the way out, that 3 seconds is so important. Because if you don't watch it, it's going to turn into 9 or 16 because you've hyperoxygenated your body. And now you don't need to breathe. And you're traveling. So your body's not going to breathe, maybe not for a minute. And then it's going to breathe and you will have lost the rhythm. Now it's important. I teach people to use the tongue as a valve against the roof of your mouth. A one-way valve, because I don't want you to close your mouth and open your nose and close your mouth because I don't want you to think about the body. You just rest the tongue against the bottom of the roof of your mouth. This is important because it connects another energy connection between the two chakras. So when you exhale, the air will blow the tongue open. When you inhale, it will suck the tongue shut and you will breathe in through your nose. So what it does, it creates a circular movement of air right underneath the pineal gland. And this is very important because this energy is what opens the pineal gland for you and allows you to use it as a ship. You can move through light, through darkness, through time, forward, backward, and you can make multiple trips so that you can look at it from all different angles. And you'll get good at it. You'll be able to look at it from the bottom, the top, the forward, the back. You'll know that area so well that when that moment comes up, you'll know exactly what to do and exactly what to say.
Interesting. I'm wondering if I can incorporate some of these techniques in my ayahuasca experiences too, under the journey of ayahuasca. I don't want to say influence because it's not really influence. I'm more influencing the ayahuasca journeys at this point. But I'm wondering if I can use this to kind of boost the experiences. Maybe this is the next level that I've been looking for.
Well, I described this to my, I had a sound producer. His name was, his last name was Plant, and he called his sound studio Power Plant. It was kind of interesting. But he had always thought about pyramids. He was always spinning pyramids in his mind, and he couldn't seem to quite get it to gel. So he would be on again and off again. And I explained it to him one day about the tetrahedrons. They're not four-sided. They're three-sided. Now, I find this so peculiar, Chris, and here it really kind of confuses this world from other worlds, because every structure we see built here on this world has four sides. Everything in the Yucatan, everything under the sea, everything in Egypt is all four-sided. That's not the basic form to go from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. It's the tetrahedron. But no matter where we go, we don't see three-sided buildings. We just don't. We see the influence of it because we can see the energy patterns in these different things, the way they arrange the buildings or the way they draw energy, the flower of life diagrams that we see all over the world. Africa, South Africa, Egypt, the Yucatan, Mexico, Canada, we see the flower of life geometry everywhere we go. Even in Scotland, even in London, we saw it. So if this is the case, why don't we see three-sided shapes for these holy buildings? We just don't. That's the disconnect between religion, what religion has done to this world, and what the truth is in the universe. And in my series, The Birth Trilogy, which we've talked about in the past, I mentioned that it is actually the sowers of confusion that have created religion in the first place, to lead mankind into a different direction where he cannot figure this out.
Would it be accurate to describe the tetrahedron as two pyramids, one on top and one below, inverted and then placed within each other?
Yeah, but they're not pyramids, they're tetrahedrons. You're exactly right, but they're three-sided. So you have one upside down and one right side up, and you plunge them into each other, and you end up with, if you look at it flat ways, you'll see what looks like a Star of David.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm visualizing the same thing. And I'm thinking about the pyramidal structures that we find all around the world. Is it possible that the other points either exist, well, most likely exist in another plane, and these are actually tetrahedrons that we're looking at, but we're looking at it from a three-dimensional perspective, and because we're only seeing part of it?
No, I thought that too, but every building that I go to, what I see in the purpose of the building, in the way that the building influenced the local surroundings, it had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with mortal power. It had nothing to do with unleashing the spirit of mankind. So I think it was a perversion, all these four-sided pyramids. And as remarkable as the architecture is, I think that's part of the mystique to it, because it even fascinates us now here in the 21st century. We look back and we see aspects of, especially the Great Pyramid in Giza, all the different aspects to it, how it lines up with the star Sirius, how the straight edges across the bottom are not straight at all, but they're curved in the same shape as the diameter of the Earth, the same radius. It wasn't even noticed until aerial photographs were taken of it, and they could see that the shadow did not go straight across the bottom of the pyramid. It was dark in the center and light on the corners, and they were able to measure that distance, and it's the diameter of 7,100 miles.
Interesting.
Or the radius of 7,100 miles.
Well, in Egypt, for example, you have a very clear four-sided pyramid there. When you look at South America, you have different types of pyramids. They are pyramids, but they're not necessarily four-sided in the same sense anyways. I mean, I guess they are when you think about it, but they're built a little bit different. Are they both representative of the same type of energy fields, or is there a difference between the South American pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids?
Well, the difference is in the geometry. The South American pyramids have a much sharper, steeper climb to them. Some of them are made of stacked stones, but most of them are actually made of mortar, a cement with using small lava rocks stacked into it. So they're actually made in stair-step formation, but they're not laid stone. They're like concrete, and there's thousands of them all over Mexico and down to the Yucatan. They're not stacked stone. So it was very important, this shape, to them, but ultimately it didn't do anything for them because it is a false energy for this world.
Okay.
The true energy is three-sided.
I see. Okay, yeah. I guess it's the ramp that's kind of throwing me off a little bit. And then you have different structures and things like that up at the top, at the where the capstone would typically be, which that's why I wondered if there are more sides to that, or if they're trying to create the energy field of more sides, even though, I mean, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Interesting. So what would you say is the most interesting or energetically powerful ancient site that
that I visited?
That you visited, or that you can even think of?
Well, I would think that there are two. One I have visited, the other I have not. I've spent a few days inside of the Great Pyramid in Egypt, not all in one stretch, but I did spend 8 hours in one stretch inside the Great Pyramid. And then I've been in it 5 other times in short periods of like 3 hours apiece. That to me is very energetic when you get to the King's Chamber, or as you come down from the King's Chamber almost to where you go out the opening that they blew in it, you can kind of make a right-hand turn and go down into what they call the pit. This is the unfinished part of the pyramid. It isn't smooth at all. It's scratched out like with hand tools. But in the pit, even though it's very hot, it's about 110 degrees down there, even in the wintertime. It's quite interesting to feel that weight of the pyramid, all that energy on top of you when you're down there in that pit in the center of the pyramid. That's a pretty energetic place. The other place I've always wanted to go to, but I have not made my way there, is the Arctic Circle. I've always felt as though, and maybe it's because my ancestor discovered the North Magnetic Pole in 1831, but I've always felt a pull to the Arctic. That's one of the reasons why I joined the expedition in 2005 to go there, because I just thought with all those flux lines of Earth going back down into that North Pole, that some kind of energy connection is there at that polar region. And I just wanted to experience it, but I have not.
I've always been drawn to Antarctica. I think there's more there.
The other end?
Yeah, Admiral
Sure.
Byrd, for example, he went to the North Pole a few times, but then he went to the South Pole and said when he went down to the South Pole, the game changed completely. To my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Admiral Byrd actually had his encounters with all the UFOs and supposed, whatever it was, Nazi bells or whatever it was that he was encountering down there. But that's where the big drama played out in the South Pole.
So the story goes. Now, he flew over the North Pole in 1926. He flew from Spitsbergen, where he put the plane back together after he hauled it up there on the Chantilly.
Oh, you know
and
what?
flew
I didn't
over the
even
North
realize
Pole.
this. We're hitting the break, so we'll pick it up right on the other side, ladies and gentlemen. Much more coming up with Brooks Agnew right here. Final segment, but it's a long one as we step even further beyond the veil.
For 5,000 years, the world was ruled with wooden ships by one man. 242 years ago, a small group of free men crafted a new nation built on liberty and freedom. Global elites have been fighting to destroy this new nation called America ever since. Based on actual events, Charm of Favor tells a true story of how they corrupted the election system. They infiltrated federal agencies and murdered witnesses, judges, and even presidents to keep from being caught. Now, the largest and wealthiest crime syndicate the world has ever known has been drawn out of the shadows. They have killed hundreds of Americans and recently attempted to assassinate half our congressmen. Still, they escape arrest through an almost supernatural charm of favor. Read Charm of Favor and be prepared to open your eyes to what may lie just around the corner. Charm of Favor is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Fear not your trials and tribulations. When you have overcome all adversity, you will then be able to harness the power required to access raw consciousness. Then, and only then, will you truly know thyself, as you travel even further, beyond the veil.
Jexy asked a really good question earlier that I wanted to address. He said, Chris, how do you stay in the moment? And Brooks brought a very interesting perspective to the table about looking in the future and looking back at the moment from a futuristic perspective. I had mentioned calming yourself when it comes to tapping into the moment that you're in right now. And Brooks, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this idea, because I think a lot of people use meditation to contemplate certain things and divest themselves of their worries and stresses and things like that of day-to-day life, which can be overwhelming on a lot of us. I mean, we've got the more you tap into the raw consciousness, the more of the weight of the universe you start to bear on your shoulders. And even the best of us, we get caught up in all of these different thoughts and thought loops and patterns and things like that. And oh man, I've had ayahuasca experiences where I'm just going into thought loops about stuff that I really don't want to think about. So how do you live in the moment? How do you get into that moment, into that center? In my opinion, what I do is I look at geometry. I've said this before, practical geometry versus sacred geometry. The practical geometry, what is the moment made up right now of? It's right now in front of me. I've got a water bottle. I've got a microphone. I've got a coffee make. I've got a little French press here. I've got several different things. This is the geometry that is around me right now. This is the moment that I'm in right now. Now, when it comes to all the worries and stresses and things like that, what is that? Is that the moment? Is that the geometry that is making up the moment? It's not. It is illusionary thoughts that are running through my mind a million miles an hour. So separating myself from those thoughts and those worries and those stresses and just focusing on the particular geometry, the practical geometry that is around me right now, helps me better focus on the actual moment. Then from that point, then I can start to deal with the stresses and worries and things like that I have of the future or any situations that are outside the particular moment. But focusing on the moment also helps to bring down the heart rate, bring down all of the bodily functions that accompany the worries and stresses and things like that. I mean, our blood pressure goes up, our heart starts to beat faster. Sometimes you get a headache, all of this. And when you can focus on the practical geometry and separate yourself from all of those worries and stresses, then you calm the body down. And then once the body and the mind are back into a calm state, then you can focus on the future and all the worries. Brooks, your thoughts?
Well, you're speaking of a condition that a lot of publications, a lot of writers have tried to address. Recently, they kind of call it mindfulness. You have mindfulness exercises that kind of help you deal with the stress of real life, of mortal life. And over time, what I've seen is that these articles have concluded that mindfulness does not help with the stress. And in some ways I have to agree with it, but in most ways I disagree with it, unless they're doing the mindfulness the wrong way. There are times when the exercise that you're talking about works just fine. I would call that daytime. At 2:00 in the morning, when you wake up and that heart is jumping out of your chest and you've soaked your pillow and you wake up, there's nobody else awake and you don't want to wake anybody else up. It's very difficult to make that solid connection, that physical connection, that to reorient your geometry to everything's okay. Now, I got to say that with time, this gets better. I am about 3 times your age. So I've had more practice at this. I know what to do when I wake up in the middle of the night like that. Not saying it's any easier, but with time, it works out. The other thing is that death has an effect on this as well. As you know, I was hit in 2012 on my motorcycle. And, they revived me on the asphalt. I went to the hospital and I woke up in the MRI and probably went in and out of consciousness a dozen times that day. And it took me a couple years to recover from that. But I discovered a very important lesson from this, because I went back many times to try to reconstruct that accident. And all I can remember is I saw the woman coming out of the parking lot in the dark Hyundai, and I felt sort of a bump, like a bump against my chair. And that's it. I was dead. So I realized at that moment that death is so easy. And when you're dead, you don't feel anything. It doesn't matter how you died. It doesn't matter if you died slowly from cancer. It doesn't matter if you burned to death or drowned or hung. It doesn't matter. When you're dead, all that goes away. And I actually brought a new perspective into my consideration when I deal with the energy, and I'm at a very high energy place in life. I do a lot of things. People that know me will tell you this. I am not an idle person at all. So that being said, I don't have a lot of stress because I have this constant perspective of the future looking back at this moment where we are right now. I'm sure you've been in those situations, either an exit interview at a job or an argument with somebody, or maybe it's just a battle of wits between you and another person. And later on that day, you've said, man, I just thought of the perfect thing to say to that person. Well, obviously, it's too late because the perfect moment to say that perfect thing has passed. But you don't have to experience that anymore. Now you can go to the future and you can be ready for these moments when they occur. You can be ready with the punchline at exactly the right moment in the joke because you've already seen it from the future. You already know how to deliver that and when to deliver that. You already know what to say. You already know how to respond. This makes those stressful times so much easier to deal with. I've been here before. I've seen this before. I know where to stand. Stand over here because that's going to blow up. Something like that.
Interesting. So, wow, you've given me so much to think about there.
Well, I mean, the main thing about Freemasonry, as you get further in this, when you get past the 14th one, you get close to the 30th one, it begins to deal a lot with the necromancy of mortality. The 33rd degree, you understand death very well. And you can see from a lot of the writings the direction they're going in this, because they want to teach you that mortality is not to be wasted. Mortality is a very tender thing that can be lost in a sneeze. It can be lost with a wrong turn on the freeway. It can be lost with ingesting the wrong thing or staying underwater for too long. You can be gone from this mortality. The main thing to that I want your listeners to understand is your mortal life took a tremendous amount of planning and energy to make happen. Why would you go through all that to have a mortal life? Because you don't understand. This mortal life is part of heaven. The challenge that you have here, the limited view of the universe, is actually what you sought. It's actually what you wanted to have. So if you feel your life as you can't wait for it to be over, but you're too chicken to kill yourself, you've got the wrong perspective altogether. Mortal life is a supremely valuable experience. Please savor every single moment of it.
That is very true. We are here for a very finite amount of time. And
only a few moments.
I find myself doing that with Sheree, for example. Every kiss that I give her, every hug that I give her, I savor that moment and try to hold on to it and try to remember. There will be that day that you wake up and it is the last day. I wonder if you get like a 2-minute warning. Like, you know, like, hey, you're about to go. Make sure to wrap it up. Kiss the one you love because it's the last time. And, you know, it seems like some people do. Like my mother, for example, I had no idea that she was about to pass away. She knew. She started making all of these plans and letting people know this and that. She taught Sheree all of her recipes. And maybe it was just me not wanting to believe it. But she was actually making a whole bunch of plans that I didn't even know about until after she had passed away. And my sister said, yeah, she was going around making all these different plans. Do you think you feel it?
It depends. I mean, obviously, a sudden and accidental end to your life, you don't feel. Although some people kind of feel like, gosh, if I get on this airplane, it might be the last thing I ever do. And there are freak accidents, you know, when it's just your time to go. But I can tell you from experience, years ago, I had melanoma on my leg. And I remember going like to the second doctor for the second opinion. He said, yeah, well, you know, you better put your affairs in order. You got a couple years, kid. That's about it. It's not curable. So I can take your leg off, but it's still going to come back. We're going to It's about quality of life. And it was a pretty shocking thing to hear. So then I went to an experimental doctor who was at another hospital. He had a different plan and cured the cancer. So that was years ago. I'm still cancer free. I'm happy as can be. But that was kind of odd to go home that day and go, 2 years, huh? Not a whole lot I can get done in 2 years, but we'll see what we can do. I wasn't panicking with it, really. I've done a lot, more than most. Like that line in, what was that movie, Waterworld, when Kevin Costner said, "I've sailed further than most men have dreamed."
I've sailed more than most men have dreamed. That's true. I feel like that in the consciousness journey. I mean, it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But there is a sense of mortality. But then the more you unlock your mortality, it almost seems as though the more you also unlock your divinity.
And you realize you never die.
Right. And it's just like getting a new car. Just because you threw away the old one, it doesn't mean that you're still not the driver of the new one.
That's right. So live a moral life, do good unto others. I say look for the good in others and help that to grow a little every day. If you do that, you can't be doing harm to people.
Right. Interesting. The path is definitely it kind of intertwines with each other. It's kind of like a serpent moving around. It comes back and forth on top of each other. And when it does, there's like more and more and more revelation, more and more symbology that is revealed. Symbols and ideas become multidimensional. The more that you unlock within yourself, the broader those symbols become and the more meaning they become. It's fascinating. It really is. I mean, take the X factor that you were talking about. 5 years ago or 8 years ago or however long it was that we did that show, I had no idea what that actually meant. Now, with this whole new perspective, we're talking about the exact same thing, and it's opening up so many doors of perception for me. It's really incredible. And I hope that the listeners have also grown with us. And I know that they have. I mean, I see the emails they send in, the comments that they leave, all of that. I mean, we've really turned this lead consciousness into gold. It's beautiful. It's wonderful.
I think it's the only network in the world that does what we do. I think you've just attracted talent and consciousness to yourself, to your network, so that we do a work every week, every Sunday that I'm on, every day that other hosts are on. We do a work, and then we make that work eternal because we save it digitally and other people can access it. And it begins to spread, especially if people that learn something or feel something will share it with their neighbor. Hey, go sign up for the archives. Listen to this program. I really think you'll get something out of it.
Well, you know what, though? It's not my network anymore. It hasn't been my network in a long time. It belongs to all of us. That's why we took on the name Beyond the Veil, because Truth Frequency now has turned into its own entity, and it's everybody's. It doesn't belong to just one person.
I like that. I like that idea a lot.
Yep, definitely. So we have about 10 minutes left. Is there anything else that you feel we should get into? Or I've got a million ideas to get into.
Well, we could take one of your ideas. I just wanted to be sure that people understood that there are meditation techniques that you can learn. It's not very expensive. You might have to travel a little bit to do it. I recommend going to Drunvilla Melchizedek, or my teacher. I went to him for the first part of it, and then to Maureen St. Germain for the second part of it. Both those links are on my website at xsquaredradio.com. And take the class. Learn how to do it. I've always thought, well, maybe after I finish writing books and maybe royalties are paying the way, I can start having seminars and workshops and teach people how to do this. And I floated it a few times out there, but I never get more than 3 or 4 people to respond, so I don't do it. But those two have developed pretty big organizations, and they have a very successful business teaching this kind of meditation.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this wisdom and knowledge with the audience. One thing, if I can take it all the way back to the very first time I heard your voice, the arc of millions of years, because when I was listening to it back then, I broke up with my girlfriend, not because of that interview, but because I was listening to that interview so much, along with a few others. She just got sick and tired of it because I changed and turned into something. She's like, why are you listening to talk radio all the time? And I'm like, because I'm trying to absorb the information. And, we were kids back then, and she was just, it was all about music and partying and things like that. And she's like, hold on. This is an old guy here. He's listening to talk radio. And eventually wound up splitting up. It's funny, but what happened is I changed. But looking at the broader perspective of arc of millions of years, I know you talked about two Earths, one being 6,000 years old, one being 4.6 billion years old. At some time, there was a merger between the two. I can't help but think of Terence McKenna's Time Wave Zero, where everything is merging down into a point of singularity. So I wonder, can that be happening again now? Could there be a third Earth that is also merging on top with the two Earths that have already merged? And maybe that explains Mandela effects and all these timeline changes.
Well, the original idea of the union of the polarity was that when Adam, on his world, Adam to Noah, was a generation of an Adamic man. And there was another Earth that was in orbit in the third dimension around this sun with man and woman on it. And you go to Genesis, you can clearly see the two creations. But somewhere in the 3800 BC range, Noah and his world fell. And when that world was merged with this world, it was cataclysmic for both worlds. Noah was on his world, on his boat, which he called at that time the Ark of Millions of Years. That world was moved through through the Milky Way galaxy to here, to merge with this world. Now that world's a higher energy, higher vibrational world. The world that was here is a lower vibrational, what we call temporal energy. And so they are coexisting in the same space at the same time. And the idea behind this, and the idea behind the entire 2012 development, from the time that Jose Arguelles discovered it on the tomb lid in the Yucatan till now, is that the two Earths will eventually come apart. Similar to us, we are a higher vibrational being that's inside this physical temporal being. We're the ones that animate it, that give it its ability, its will to move. Without our spirit inside of it, we're just a lump of biological transducer material. So we're put together at a process from conception to birth, and we come apart at death. Same thing with Earth. Earth is born, put together with this spirit Earth, and then it separates. Now, the book, the Birth series, the Birth trilogy, was a continuation of that union of the polarity idea, in the sense that all the beings that will vibrate with that higher vibrational Earth get to go with it when it returns back through the Milky Way galaxy to go home. And all of the beings that resonate with the darker or colder or temporal energy remain here on the cold gray Earth that's left behind for this aging yellow sun on the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. That's the whole idea. And having been on a world that was wiped out in an expanding sun, it is a different feeling to be disconnected, to have no place to reincarnate back to come to a new world and to wake up here and see the condition of spirit beings in mortal bodies, see how they have been tricked and how they have been sidetracked and cloaked and conditioned and programmed in this matrix of a world, breaks my heart sometimes. I wanted a way to reach them and wake them up. That's why I became a talk radio host 14 years ago. That's why I write books. That's why I give lectures and radio interviews, because I want people to realize who they really are. If they could just remember who they really are, it would make an enormous difference.
Well, and I seem to remember you talking about this other planet in the follow-up book. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know Sheree read it front to back, and she was just enthralled by it.
Remembering the future.
Remembering the future. That's it. Yes.
I actually have a chapter in there called Home World, and I describe, I even have a drawing that I painted of my own hand in that world. So you can see that the biology was quite different.
Okay, I had a vision of our real bodies, and they were kind of a pale green kind of color, longer fingers, black fingernails, and more muscular, and maybe a little bit more veiny, but not too much than the human form here. Does that sound familiar at all?
To me, I mean,
No.
there were
Okay.
two beings on that world, two races left after all the wars. There was us two, which we had a golden skin and 4 joints in the fingers instead of 3, more vertebrae in the neck, and we were about 7 feet tall. We also had very blue eyes, large blue irises, and long blonde hair. The other race, and I actually met a person, his name is Adam Apollo. I don't know if you've ever met him or not or spoken to him.
No.
He remembers being the smaller race on that world. He came from that world as well. It was a smaller race, about 36 inches tall, with pale skin, large round brown eyes, short kind of shoulder-length brown hair, and they were craftsmen. They were a peaceful people that were post-apocalyptic, and they lived in peace, did what they loved doing, and it had a community without money, without rules or laws, because everyone obeyed a kind of inner moral law. And it was wonderful being part of that community.
Interesting. Brooks, give us your websites again, please.
The main one is X Squared Radio. So it's xsquaredradio.com. If you want to get the new book, you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or go to charmafavor.com. If you buy the book from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Nook, whatever, inside is an email address. If you'll write me, I will send you the audio version of the book for free. So if you're not a good reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you.
I love that line. That is genius because, yeah, I'm the type, I don't read books. I just can't sit down. I get a headache when I look at them. I put my reading glasses on. But I can listen to an audiobook all night long. So it's the perfect format, definitely. So, Brooks, thank you very much for your time this evening. I know it's getting late where you are. If you could hang out for just a few minutes after the show so we can chat, that'd be awesome. So,
love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. And as I said, next Friday, Frank Castle will be joining us. And I think Raw, we're going to try to get Raw on sometime, but I know he's really busy with a new baby. And it's the first TFR baby to be born. So it's really awesome. And then we need to reach back out to Seven Bomar and get him back on the show, and many more people that you guys and gals have been writing in and recommending. So kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time is going to be, and we'll see you next weekend as we step even further beyond the veil.